And I'm with you 100%. I just would say I'm sure there's some groypers that are saying something like that. I would call that wignat. This like chest beating. Oh, it's because I'm white. They're keeping the white man down. You know, they are keeping the white man down, but we have to be worthy of our ancestors as white men and say, we don't need permission. We don't need to ask for permission. We're not going to let them get in our way. They're going to do bullshit to us, but we have to find a way to overcome. I guess where I would diverge slightly, because I hear this all the time, and directionally, I suppose I agree. But, you know, when you talk about the birth rates, you're 100% right that the birth rates are a problem. The white people are not having kids. And if the white people don't have kids, it's over. We're going to be replaced. Yep. And I hear people say this to me all the time. They say, you need to have kids. And I plan on doing that. I plan on getting married and having kids at some point. I guess where I would depart, even from my fellow white people who say this, is that there is something structural happening where I don't believe the answer is that we're going to tell ourselves we all need to start having kids. Because how many people are even political? How many people are aware of the white genocide? How many people are going to have kids as a response to this problem? It's a very, very tiny number. And it's not to say that we shouldn't contribute to the solution, but it is to say that we fundamentally must engage in politics. It's sort of like chess. You know, all the pawns could simultaneously wake up one day and say, we need to have more white babies. We need to have kids. I think that's highly unlikely. We need to strike at the king. We need a regime. We need to engage in politics. And I don't just mean like voting. I mean, we need to become resourceful, influential, rich, run media, be entrepreneurs, you know, pay politicians to run for office. And we need to use politics to change society. Because when you look at the strategy of like the Jews as an example, they're 2% of the population, but they have this extraordinary influence. That's because they go for the locus of power. They're in LA, they're in New York City, they're in DC. These are the most powerful cities in the world. They're in San Francisco, they're in El Segundo. They're striking at the locus of power. And from the locus of power proceeds the cultural standards, proceeds these dominant narratives in the education system from academia. And so I'm really a believer, not in as much saying, oh, white people in general need to have more kids. Certainly that's a good thing. But it's more like I want the most brilliant, elite human capital, the smartest, richest, best white people to become as powerful as possible, take over the institutions, and from the institutions promulgate a message of fertility, racial solidarity, national solidarity, and national consciousness. That's kind of where I'm at. And I don't think you'd even disagree, but it's just kind of like going a little step further on that.
No, I agree with you, actually, completely. And culture is the driving force behind all things. You know, I often comment on white people, black people. I'm in a unique position because I am a race mixed individual, which pisses off a large percentage of the internet. But this is how I was born, and that's how it goes. And there's not much I can do about it. But I would argue, besides yourself, there's probably no one else with a platform as large as mine who speaks up for white people ever. And one of the problems with extreme right-wing white people is we have this infinitely divisible, constantly searching for more and more based to the point where no matter how much you do for them or try to help them, you're going to eventually not be based enough for them. And this is seen amongst white people in general. If we removed all the black people from Western civilization today, within 30 years, the Germans would be fighting the Italians again. I mean, that's what happened. Only 30 or 40 years ago, the Irish and English were blowing each other up. And now Ireland and England's both full of asylum seekers from the boats. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So this infinitely divisible, this constant search for the more and more based version, I actually think in some ways subverts the whole movement. The movement you've launched is so fantastic. The cultural effect you've had is also fantastic. But the biggest threat to the movement is not going to be external. It's going to be internal. And there's a percentage of people, no matter what I say, in defense of you, in defense of white people, in defense of Western civilization, come along and say, because my dad is black, who was a chess genius, by the way, is the only reason I'm even smart, that I'm a piece of shit and I need to be kicked out or I need to die or whatever. And I don't care because truthfully, I think it's hilarious. But when you have these cartoon anon accounts constantly going to a deeper and deeper level of everyone's a Jew, everything is this, everything is that. And they can't even get along with somebody who is clearly on their side in the larger fight. This is how you're going to end up losing the fight in the long run. And I think that's where some of the problem comes from, which again is not even your fault. But that's the problem with that movement as a whole. And I'm going to say one thing from a personal perspective. I do feel like there is a degree of ungratefulness. Once again, this is not your fault, but there's an ungratefulness amongst people and an ungratefulness amongst the internet. I remind the internet on October 8th, against all legal advice, I told Piers Morgan it was a genocide. I stuck up and was anti-Israel on Piers Morgan on October 8th, before it was cool on the internet, very much like you. Now everybody does it. You did it before it was cool. I did it before I was cool. Anti-Semitism is a crime in Europe. They put me back on house arrest. I was locked in my house for 11 months because of what I said on a podcast. And now they turn up and tweet underneath that I'm a Jew. And I just think if that's how we're going to operate as a movement, we're only ever going to be a laughingstock to our enemies. And I agree with you about the locus of power. You're completely correct. And I think it's a multifaceted attack. But we have to be very careful here, because if I owned a farm and all the sheep worked out that I had a slaughterhouse, and all they did all day was say, that's a slaughterhouse, he's got a slaughterhouse, but they still walked into it, I wouldn't really care. There has to be a point where you don't obey what I want you to do. If they're trying to stop you from reproducing, then you must reproduce. If they're trying to beat you down so you don't make money because of usury, you need to make money. If they don't want you to be brave, you need to be brave. You need to look at their exact playbook, and instead of tweeting at people, instead of accusing every single person who doesn't have an Anon cartoon account of being a Jew, you need to do the absolute opposite of what they want you to do. And I believe that's how we win. That's how your movement and you become president of the United States. I think that's better for you and the movement as a whole. So when I made that tweet, that Groypers speak like a defeated people, that's because I'll say something, and I speak in absolutes. I absolutely do, and I think trolling is hilarious. And I make it clear that, you know, a white man, I say white man can't get a kid out of a woman unless he buys her 2 houses and 3 cars and a nanny, ha ha ha. The Somalian can get 11 kids out of Fatima without a job. And I make a joke of it. All of the replies is, well, now you're a Jew, you're a race-mixing Jew, you work for the Jews. And I just think that that is counterproductive to the good fight and counterproductive to your movement. That's my actual view.
At the same time, though, you got to recognize that if you're going to rage bait, you can't really be mad when people get mad. You know what I mean?
I think it's hilarious. Yeah. I think it's funny. I mean, I'm real nigger Tate. I call myself a nigger all day long. I think it's funnier than it. I love trolling. I'm all for it. I'm just saying that if we're going to try and have a serious political movement here, then calling every single person a Jew because of some tedious or tenuous link, I think is disingenuous. I think that, and again, this is just my personal view, and I don't know enough. Since I got released from house arrest after 3 years in my house in February, I haven't been online that much. And I noticed you said I didn't weigh in on the Candace Tucker thing. I'm not versed enough to truly weigh in. I haven't seen every video. I haven't seen all of it. I haven't seen the back and forth. I've been with my children living my life. However, I would argue that Tucker has red-pilled a lot of people who would never watch your show about very important things that are happening in the American government that you'd agree with. I would say the same for Candace. I think of them on the good side of the fight. And perhaps this is going to get me in trouble. I think of them as good people trying to do the best thing they can, which is tell their version of the truth. And they're by and large on our side. And I think this infinite, divisible, constant infighting, constant looking for who's the most base, constantly saying, well, he's done 99 things right, but this one thing makes him a Jew. I just think it's holding us back by and large. That's my personal view, but it's not my movement. So I'm just saying what I see it as from the outside.
Well, and, you know, maybe that's where the disagreement lies, because I talked with Alex Jones about this yesterday. We didn't even plan on talking about it, but he brought it up. Obviously, I'm in this big feud with both Candace and Tucker Carlson right now, and I see it being characterized on Twitter by some people as infighting. And I would agree with you. I would tend to agree with you that if I were an outside observer, I would look at Candace and Tucker and myself, and I would think we're all on the same side. We're all pushing in the same direction. Certainly, we're all criticizing Israel. We're all against the war in Iran and the rest of it. And that's what I would tend to think. And yet, when I went out and did Candace's show, instead of talking about what we had in common, she wanted to talk about all the things that we had apart. And she in particular wanted to press me on if I really hated Jews and if I was really a racist. So that confounded me, because if I'm an outside objective observer, maybe without all the information, I would say, wait, aren't Candace, Tucker, and Nick on the same side? But being me, I went to do her show with my suit on, ready to talk about the Iran war, the neocons, all this kind of stuff. And she's pressing me, why do you hate Dave Smith? Is it because he's Jewish? Do you hate Jews for being Jewish? Are you a racist? Is that why you're against race mixing? And so I finished the interview, and not to relitigate the whole thing, but this is just a summary of it. I finish the thing and I get on my show and I say, it's weird she's putting it behind a paywall. I said, and also I'm unhappy with what we talked about. I thought this was an olive branch. Clearly it was some kind of like a lecture. I thought she was having me out to maybe extend an olive branch and connect. And instead I got a wagging finger from a woman in my face, which I don't really care for. And then, as if to make matters better, she goes with Tucker Carlson. And Tucker, who, you know, me and him have a bit of a history, he calls me a basement dwelling, weird gay kid. He says I'm a CIA agent. He unloads this personal attack on me. And so, yeah, I would not characterize that as infighting. I would say, to me, that looks like a coordinated attack on me, and it's not purity spiraling. It is coming from them in the other direction, saying that I'm too extreme. In fact, that's literally what Tucker said. Tucker said that I am a crazy anti-Semite who is trying to make them look bad by being too ideologically pure. So, you know, maybe you've been away for a long time. You don't
Yeah, he literally called him David Duke.
don't know what's going on, but it wasn't me coming at them for being soft. No, they were coming at me for being too extreme. And that's where I have to defend myself and say, wait a second, you're calling me a CIA agent? Your fucking dad was in the CIA. I said this to Tucker on this big show. A week later, Elon Musk is echoing what Tucker Carlson said, calling me a Fed. And it's in the context of this Matrix attack. I don't know what else you call that then you came on Twitter and said the thing about the Groypers. I think that's why they took it a certain way, because what it looked like was coordination. I don't know if you're in on that or not. I don't believe you were, but certainly something weird is going on. And it all coincided with what you said, which is, I'm on this generational run. I have broken containment. I'm going mainstream. Now, I would like to do a show with Tucker and talk about our similarities and differences. I would have liked to do that with Candace Owens, but it seems like they're trying to keep me out. They're trying to push me aside. As far as the movement's concerned, I'd like to be on the same page with them, but, you know, they don't feel that way about me. So, you know, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that whole situation?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. And like I said, I'm not fully versed on all of it. I guess there's two ways I can answer that question. At a certain point, and of course, you're a full-grown man, you make your own decisions. I'll be very clear that I like Candace. She's always been very respectful to me. I think she's fantastic at her job. I actually think she's amazing at what she does. I have nothing bad to say about her. I think that when people were saying the Bridget series was irrelevant, I think that's disingenuous. I think it's actually very relevant to find out if the most prominent country in the European Union is being run by a pedophile and his dad. I also think it's hilarious that she trolled Macron into having a meltdown. I think that trolling's funny, and I think it's funny. I don't know how anyone doesn't find that funny, that legal letters are flying around the world. I mean, you're saying they attacked you. I respect it. There's two ways to answer that question. The first thing you can do, and you can make your own decision as a full-grown man, is it about you and your own personal feelings, which it's allowed to be, by the way, or is it about the movement by and large as a whole? Because I've sat down with people who have come out for me guns blazing, but I believe they were 65% on the same side as me. And I defended myself, and I thought, you know what? They're doing more harm than good. And instead of arguing about the color of the wallpaper inside the castle, let's defeat the orcs at the gate first. And then we can start arguing about how we're going to decorate this room. But that's a decision that you can make personally. I'm not saying what they did is right, and I'm not saying what you did is wrong. That's a decision that you can make. I understand that my timing now with that context would be suspect. I understand that absolutely. But I have nothing against Candace and Tucker. And the whole CIA agent dad thing, I'd actually like to address that as well. One of the reasons why that holds no weight with me is my father was in the intelligence services. And now there's a whole bunch of people spamming my account saying that I'm a Jewish asset because my father was CIA. But I've been very honest and open about the fact that he was a translator and he spoke 3 languages. And I was also open about the fact that he was discharged without a pension for not following orders, ended up living in his car being a traveling chess player. And I had to grow up in a homeless hostel in Luton, England, fighting Kosovans at the age of 11. So if there's some big intel agency op going on, I never got any money from it. And our family grew up destitute. And I grew up in the worst area in England. And now they're throwing me in jail at random. So for anyone to believe that I'm some kind of intelligence op or a Fed is disingenuous. And another thing, and I want to make this clear, when I talk with you about issues, I'm very honest and open about the fact that you have swaths of knowledge I don't have. I don't want to get pulled into muddy waters where I'm in a situation and we're discussing something I know nothing about. You can start talking about the financing of a particular senator, and I don't know. So I kind of operate on feels, you know? Do I think you're a Fed? Truthfully, in my heart, no. Do I think Candace and Tucker are Feds? In my heart, no. When someone says, Tucker's a Fed, his dad was in the CIA, I say, my dad was in the CIA, and we were fucking broke. And he got discharged, and he died destitute with $15 in his pocket. So I don't buy any of that. What I do think is perhaps there's some ego involved. Perhaps we're at a pivotal moment in culture. Perhaps maybe there is a degree of them trying to assert dominance over you or trying to show that, you know, they're not scared of your influence. That's all possible and all very real. I can only answer what I would have done in your situation, which was what I said earlier. I would have sat down with Candace, I would have defended myself and say, you know what, by and large, I think she does fantastic work. By and large, I agree with her. So I don't see the point in going to war with her. However, that's your decision to make. And I do also understand that going to war with people is entertaining. And we are in the entertainment business. That's another thing to consider. It's pretty funny to go to war with people and start swinging. But we have to sit down and be professionals here. And as professionals, we have to sit and say, okay, are we really trying to win? Because if there's things you've said I could get upset about, but I don't actually give a shit. You could sit here right now and call me a nigger and say I'm a Jew, and I'd be like, you know what? I like you anyway. I'm going to like you whether you like it or not. I'm going to say, I like what Nick says. I think what he's doing is important. I don't give a fuck what he says about me. I like what he does. And I think that that's actually a degree of maturity that the left have that we don't have, because they hate us so much. They're so unified and binded by their hate for us that they'll never infight over small issues. They're too busy trying to kill us. And I think unless we can manage to get our heads around doing something similar, we're always going to end up, every time we get any power, just infighting and falling to pieces.
Well, I would say that as far as you three are concerned, I do believe you're all different. I think that you are different than Tucker, and I think that Tucker is different from Candace. And the reason I knew that is because when Candace went on with Tucker, Tucker said, oh, you know, this kid, he's saying my dad is in the CIA. And Candace said, yeah, and he said that I'm Russian intelligence. And Tucker said, yeah, but that's more likely than my dad being in the CIA or me being in the CIA. So in that moment, I was like, okay, so wait a second. These two are not on the same page. And I don't think you're on the same page with them even necessarily on this whole thing. And I guess what I would say about their attack is, in particular, Tucker's attack was to discredit me. And, you know, I don't want to drag you into a conversation that you don't know all the information about, because I don't think that's fair. But suffice to say, the particular thrust of his attack was to say that I'm a federal operative, was to say that I'm a federal agent. And you say that the question is, how do I handle that? Do I punch back really hard? Do I sort of take my lumps, so to speak? I would say that's a very pernicious and specific charge to make, which is supposed to say, and it was almost artful the way that he did it. He said, Nick says a lot of the right things, but you shouldn't listen to him because he's not who he says he is. And that sort of says to me that they are trying to block me from having influence. They're trying to destroy my reputation so that people don't listen. And in my show against Tucker, I sort of contrasted our two positions. If it's about the movement, for me, my movement says we're about American sovereignty. We want to break free from Israel. We want to break free from Jewish oligarchs. It's identitarian. America has a white character. It has a European character. It's racial. That has a lot to do with it. We need to shut down immigration. We need to get rid of this oligarchic syndicate that's running our country. And I would question, does Tucker conform to that? Because repeatedly he insists, I have never talked about racial replacement migration. He insists, I'm not an enemy of Israel. I love Israel. I love going to Israel. Now, what movement is he a part of? He's part of the movement where you work for Fox News for 20 years. And then when the whole world gets red-pilled, now you're going to talk about Israel a little bit. Is the movement where your dad's in the CIA? Is the movement where you call up Trump and tell him to do a COVID lockdown? Is the movement where you say you hate Trump and you're ready to see him go away because you can't stand him? I don't know who Tucker is. I know who I am. And I would say that when push comes to shove, I have a much better case to make that I'm a credible voice than he does. I would make the case that my movement, to the extent that it's different, is much more consistent with what's right and where the people are at. If he wants to make it me versus him, be my guest. I don't think he's going to like where that goes on a long enough timeline. So that's why I said to Alex Jones yesterday, I said, I would love to privately or publicly talk to Tucker. If he thinks I'm a Fed, if he cares about the movement, then, look, I'm not going away anytime soon. He needs to listen and take me seriously, obviously, because his attack on me backfired. I think he needs to put up or shut up. Have me on the show and debate the differences, make the case I'm a Fed, or get with the fucking program. But that's kind of where I'm at with him. So I'm with you. I do have a consciousness of the movement, and I think that maybe Tucker plays a role in this movement, and maybe Candace plays a role, but I think they need to have a team player mentality. I can't be expected to have all the magnanimity in the world and all the patience and tolerate the kind of nonsense they're throwing my way. That's kind of my position, because I like you a lot, and I think, when you and I had our disagreement on Twitter, you said, fuck it, let's get on a stream. I love that. I think that's honest. I think, like you said, we don't agree on everything. And I've taken issue with things you've said and vice versa. But we can kind of talk about where we align. And first of all, we can talk. Yeah. I think we should expect the same thing from them as well. And in particular, Tucker. So that's sort of where I'm at, because I sort of see what you're saying, but I got to stick up for myself a little bit in this case.
Totally get it. And that's my point about the tweet I made. And I totally understand how the timing was suspect. But even recently, even today, one more thing I want to say when it comes to your movement as a whole. And once again, I need to stay in my lane because it's not my movement. It's yours and you've built it. And most importantly, you've suffered for it. It wasn't handed to you. You suffered to build what you've built, which is why it's so strong and so powerful. Same as my movement, which, I would say it's moved over now. I did my job, and I would argue that we moved into a new era where we have new concerns. When I was saying the things I was saying at the time, it was groundbreaking, and now everybody says them. And there's always going to be a part of you, which is a bit like, okay, so when it was dangerous to say these things, I did it, and now it's not dangerous, everyone says it, and it pisses you off a little bit. So I also understand perhaps when you just mentioned, you said there that Tucker's now saying it when everyone else is saying it. There's going to be a bit of personal, like, hey, I got debanked. I couldn't fly. I suffered for this. Like, I went to jail for what I said, and now everyone tweets it all day long and calls me a Fed. Part of you is going to be like, well, that's ungrateful of the masses, isn't it? Because I was the one who was suffering to even say this stuff in the first place, which is a real important point. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. I totally get it. And one more thing with the whole Groyper movement as a whole, and I just want to say these things, and I'm saying them from an outside perspective. I am a friend of your movement. I consider myself a friend of yours. I believe in what you guys are doing. You're fucking hilarious. I'm not an enemy in any regard. But I do think that it's very difficult. We have to draw a line somewhere.
He's doing tricks on it right now. No, it's funny. It's good he's giving him props.
And we have to have some degree of, well, what are the parameters then? Okay, Tucker did attack Nick. Perhaps, or Candace attacked Nick, perhaps, fine. But if they are exposing X, Y, Z, is that worthwhile? And also, we have to come along and say, sometimes these tedious links can be exaggerated upon. Only a few hours ago, I retweeted Milo, and you wrote a tweet underneath it saying that this is very suspicious. This was a few hours ago. And I retweeted Milo because Milo defended me, saying that all these court cases against me, nobody can seem to put me in jail, nobody has any proof. I didn't think, Milo and Nick, I don't know the story of you two, to be honest. I now know you don't like each other. I don't know why. And with all due respect, I don't care. He defended me, so I retweeted it. I also retweeted a 3-person account who defended me with 3 followers. He could be a pedo. I don't fucking know. I just retweeted it. So sometimes there's too much noticing and there's too many strings drawn and there's too much, people are looking for insult where it doesn't really exist. And I think that's one of the other things, separate to Candace and Tucker, because that was very deliberate against you, as you've just explained. One of the other things that I catch flack for from your movement is I breathe in the wrong direction, and perhaps a Jew was pointing that way when he breathed in 1941. And before you know it, I've got these spurgs spamming all over Twitter. And the reason that that's a bad thing is not because I give a shit. It's because it genuinely delegitimizes what you're trying to do.
Well, and I think you're legit. I think that, as far as the Milo thing is concerned, the only reason I even mentioned it is because Candace did her show with me. She did her show with Tucker, and then she does a show with Milo. Elon Musk replies to Milo calling me a fed. Then you come in and kind of, you didn't really pick a side, but you sort of said the Brigitte Macron thing's legit, and you said the Groypers talk too much about the Jews, or that they blame the Jews or something, and then you retweeted Milo. It looked like it was coordinated. I hope you understand that. And totally. I think that people need to scrutinize these things because, as you know, and you're brilliant on politics. I consider you a friend too, and I consider what you have built to be one of the most positive things that's happened in the 2020s. And I even come down on your side when you're arguing with Catholics like Matt Walsh, because honestly, a lot.
Tate's laughing because you read that chat. You read the super chat, same as me. He's trying to keep a straight face because he was trying to pay attention to Nick, but he was reading that. And that shit was funny.
Out of the Catholic, white right, they're pussies when it comes to women. And a lot of the trad stuff is 100% steered by women. So, I mean, your thing on patriarchy, in my opinion, is indispensable. It's literally indispensable. And it's like, it's actually a good thing that we're in the Tate generation of young kids that are saying, what color is your Bugatti and all. I think it's actually a really good thing. But with that being said, as far as these connections are concerned, I think transparency is the solution. Yeah. You coming on this and saying, hey, I just retweeted him just because. Okay, valid, legitimate. I hear you. But in a lot of these cases, typically where there's smoke, there's fire. And I like to draw these connections because this is how politics operates. You do get these networks that come together. They're networks of patronage. They're networks of money. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of people came to me privately and said, I'm on your side. I agree with you, but I can't speak out against Tucker because he's done things for me, because he's a friend of mine. And I've heard that from a lot of people. I'm not going to name names. Some of them said it publicly. Glenn Greenwald, Ian Carroll. They said a lot of nice things about me. Dave Smith, too. But they also said, I don't even really want to weigh in because I like Tucker. Now, in our political battle, we actually have to be willing to criticize people. We have to be willing to scrutinize those kinds of things. And someone like Tucker, he's got some explaining to do. He said he didn't know his dad was in the CIA. He lied. He did know that. Now, if we're coming for the Matrix, and insofar as the Matrix is the deep state, we're going to need an answer on that. I would like an answer on that, as well as some of these other things. And so that's where it's like, I agree with you. There is 100%. There can be a schizo tendency. And unfortunately, when you introduce concepts like Palantir, a limited hang.
Just connected that point. That's one. I mean, I'm gonna let him finish here, but that's one of the greatest points he made. It's like Tate will come on here. He'll answer for this. He'll be like, yeah, it's just an anomaly. The retweet, whether that's true or not, he's at least answering for it. Tucker won't give a fucking answer. Candace won't give a fucking answer. That's the problem.
Yeah, when you introduce that to low IQ people, they'll start seeing it everywhere. And unfortunately, it is true. I've seen it. People like trip on their shoelace and say this was a Palantir limited hangout. It does happen. But in many cases, we actually do need transparency on some of these connections, because it's not lost on me that, like Tucker Carlson, one of his critiques of me, he said that I am delegitimizing someone like J.D. Vance. And I said, well, wait a second. Tucker had J.D. Vance on his show 46 times. Tucker made a personal appeal to Trump to choose Vance as his nominee. Now, Candace does not seem to be gung-ho about Vance. So there might be some, like I said, I think Candace is different than Tucker, and they're both different than you. But when Tucker came at me with that, I said, wait a second. He's calling me CIA. His dad is CIA. His friend Joe Kent is CIA. His buddy J.D. Vance works for Peter Thiel, who's a CIA contractor. That's a lot of CIA. That's a ton of CIA going on. And he lied about what he knew about the CIA. That's where I say, okay, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So, you know, I 100% agree. There can be a tendency to get a little schizo, or maybe there's like a low IQ version of what we talk about. But I don't think I'm wrong about a lot of these connections. And, you know, when you reposted Milo, and, you know, maybe you'll admit it could have come across as a bad look. And that's why it's helpful when you said, that's how I know you're legit. A lot of people behind the scenes tell me, you got to press Tate. Tate's the enemy. Remind him his dad was in the CIA. What I respect about you is you talk to me. I have your number. I talk to you. I've been on streams with you. You're transparent. You've said your dad is in the CIA. We didn't have to dig that out of anywhere. And to me, that's the difference. Is there that transparency? If you're transparent, you know, we can ask the question, it gets answered, and we could say, okay, that's good enough. But if people hide or lie or they're not forthcoming, that's where there's a little scrutiny. So that's where I'm at on that. I do think it's important to look at some of those things.
No, it makes perfect sense. And just once again, from the very outside perspective, and I have to make it clear that I'm not as versed on all of these topics as a lot of the people who are watching this, but I've barely been online. I pop up online. I see there's this feud going on. The first thing I felt was a degree of sadness, to be honest. I mean, that's what I felt. And it was the same with Elon and Trump. I disagreed with Elon about H1B1. I think everybody did with a brain. Nobody wants that shit. It's a joke. But I think by and large, he's done fantastic things. I think that Twitter, if he never bought it, by now would be so fully locked down. I think he did help with the culture. I think he made some massive positive pushes in the correct direction. And maybe a lot of this is going to be personality driven. Perhaps this is just me from a personality perspective. But if somebody does something good, I try very hard to not forget what they've done. The internet is a very fast moving place. There's a lot of ungratefulness on the internet because you can do something amazing on a Monday and everyone hates you on a Tuesday because it's fun to hate people and it's interesting and trolling is fun. And that's kind of how it works. But when Trump and Elon started arguing and there was the big division, I felt a degree of sadness. When I saw that Tucker, Candace, and you didn't get along, I really, perhaps I'm a sentimental old man, I felt like we'd all be better if we were to a degree on the same team. And we're never all going to agree on everything. I like what you said about the transparency point. That's fantastic. Me, from a personality perspective, if there's orcs at my gate, I'm prepared to work with somebody who I disagree with on 99% of the problems besides let's kill the orcs. So I noticed as well, a lot of the Groypers are constantly retweeting and constantly hammering Tristan for supporting J.D. Vance. Well, J.D. Vance is the only American politician who talks about the fact that we don't have any freedom of speech in Europe. J.D. Vance was the only politician who talked about the fact that Romania, the country we're in, the country that locked us up, overthrew their own election. He's the only one who called it out. So perhaps at a deeper level, you know things I do not know, or there's some things about him I would not like, perhaps. But initially, the initial battle in Europe, we can't even talk. He's the only one sticking up for us. And it's kind of like this...
Tate's not really wrong there. Until I learned about the Peter Thiel connection of J.D. Vance and a lot of the corrupt shit with it, like, I was one of the biggest J.D. Vance fans. I mean, people can go back to my early episodes of this show. I don't delete them for that reason, to be transparent. But you could see I was cheering Vance on. I was hyping him up through his speeches, everything. I loved J.D. Vance until I really learned the Peter Thiel connection, and then it opened my eyes to how corrupt he was and how bought and paid for he was. So, yeah, not a bad point by Tate. Again, it doesn't give an excuse to ignorance, but it's not a bad point overall.
Infinitely divisible problem, which is a problem we're going to have with the entire movement, especially if we're successful. The more successful we are, the more fragmented it's going to become. As I said, if we had a white-only nation, the Italians would fight the Spanish, would fight the Germans, and before you know it, the North and the South would hate each other, and you'd be a Texan, and you'd be from Chicago, and everyone would hate each other again, even though we're all the same skin color. That's how it was before. That's why Europe was at constant war. So this infinite divisible problem is a real one, and we kind of have to find a way, especially, and this is me speaking out of turn because it's your movement, it's not my movement. But for you, I would say you have to kind of try to find a way to give some hard parameters and allow people who are not as intelligent as you, not as smart as you, not as well versed as you, and most of your fans are not going to be. That's why you're the star, to sit and say, okay, where does someone fall? Are they on the good side or the bad side? Because perhaps they did this and this and this, but by and large, they've done X, Y, Z. I always thought, in my infinite ignorance, that Ian Carroll was a good guy. He exposed things, and I watched his videos, and I thought, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. And then I saw his feed, and everyone was calling him a Jewish plant. And I'm like, what the fuck? Maybe I just don't know enough. Maybe I'm ignorant and dumb. But I was like, how the fuck is he a Jew? He's literally said the opposite the whole way through. So I do think this is some kind of issue which is going to be nearly impossible to solve, because the internet's the internet, and this is how it works. And also, I will state this, even my movement, there are people in my movement who are retards, and they'll go to the gym and they'll hit their chest and they'll tell every woman to fuck off. And, you know, they'll walk around with a gun saying they're a G, and they're fucking retards, and they're part of my movement. And that's going to be part of every single movement. That's part of it. I just think we need to try our very best if we want to make a serious political and genuine change. You're right. We have to draw connections. We have to notice patterns. That's what you've done fantastically. That's what you've built your brand on. And perhaps my transparency allows me to sit down and explain that my father was discharged dishonorably for not following orders, and that we never even got a military pension and grew up destitute. You can all look that up online. Perhaps my transparency helps me, yes. But sometimes I see so much stuff being thrown around. I always like to think of things from the enemy's perspective. If I was them, and I saw you fighting with Candace, fighting with Tucker, and then I retweet someone, and then you say I'm part of them, and they're sitting there knowing none of us are part of them, they're laughing their fucking ass off. And I just think we have to be very conscious of that. That's the only point I'm making.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I just, you know, then it's got to be all in the family, because they instigated with me. I would have been glad to join up with Tucker. And honestly, here's what I'll say on the stream. I still am.
Who just fixed the coffee for Tate just had an assistant reach and like fix the coffee logo so it's pointing the camera. That's fucking hilarious. That's funny. There's definitely multiple people in the room with Tate right now. Myron just looks like he's in a fucking trance. I wonder if he's gonna talk at all. I don't know. Maybe he's just moderating. I thought he was part of this debate though.
Because it's true that Tucker is getting torched by a lot of his erstwhile Jewish or pro-Israel allies. Yep. There's no question about that. And same with Candace Owens. Yep. Candace and Tucker, and to your point, you know, just to demonstrate, because I think I'm objective and I think I'm magnanimous, I think that Candace and Tucker, you're 1000% correct. They have brought a lot of people closer to the truth. There is just no question. Candace with the women, Tucker with the normies. And, you know, Candace with the normie women, I suppose, and you as well. I mean, you know, but we're talking about them in this case, and you without a doubt as well. So I do believe there's room for cooperation. It's just, it's like we said before, though, if that's sort of my perspective, I'm sort of coming to Candace to join up, but she's telling me you're a racist anti-Semite, and I'd like to cooperate with Tucker, but he's calling me a fed and I'm this loser and all this. It's like, so I would extend the olive branch to someone like Tucker. And me, I have such a consciousness for the team. Me and Candace have a very vicious rivalry right now. For me, it is, and I say this, my right hand to God, it is not personality driven. It is not ego driven. I could forgive her tomorrow. I've called her a bitch like 100 times. And I know you probably don't love that, but I've called her a bitch a bunch of times. I could apologize for that tomorrow, and I could sit down and have dinner and be best friends tomorrow. The question is there that willingness on the other side to get on the same page? Is there that willingness to kind of open up the space for someone who is a little bit further to the right? I do believe that.
I get it. So I've got a question for the sake of our debate. So I would argue, and of course, once again, this is full of presuppositions. I'm just guessing here.
I wish you hit the J.D. Vance point harder back, Nick, there, before Tate. Tate's changing the topic.
I would argue that there's a degree of disingenuity when it comes to people saying that her Bridget series is not important or it's trash. And I think you made a clip on it. I didn't watch the whole clip, but you said something about how Macron is an enemy of Israel or something along these lines. And why is she going for Macron? I truthfully, and I'm saying this from the heart, and I've only watched 2 episodes of her series. I haven't even watched the whole thing. And I didn't even watch your whole clip. But I don't see how anyone can not think that's good journalism and not think it's hilarious. I really don't think it's genuine for people to sit and say that that series was a setup somehow and she's working for the Russians somehow and that she's somehow working for the Jews because she did that. And I think that it's people disliking her, so instantly tarnishing her work. And I think that it's very important for us as professionals to be able to sit down and say, even of my worst enemy, I can sit and say, I don't like that person, but that work was good. Like, I think Matt Walsh, by and large, is not even a bad person. I think he just has no impact on the culture at all. I don't think anybody cares what he says. But when I saw some of his clips when he was making fun of the trannies, it was funny. Like, you know, okay, cool. That's good work. Like, I don't care who makes the work if the work is good. And I noticed after your argument with her, everyone was saying that her Brigitte series was bullshit. I don't think it's unimportant, and I don't think it was bullshit. I think it was actually very informative, and I think it was quite an interesting story. And I think that if Macron is fucking his dad, we should know. And I also think that it's fucking hilarious how triggered he is. And I would argue that normally you, if you didn't have a beef with Candace, would also be saying the same thing, that this is funny, and Macron's pissed, and this is all hilarious. Or do you genuinely, your emotions, your feelings for Candace aside, really think that that piece of work is somehow bad work to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's actually the opposite. I liked Candace last year, and I hated the Brigitte Macron thing. I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to mess with her thing. I'll give you a counterexample. She did an interview with Phil Turney, who's a survivor of the USS Liberty. I thought that was excellent. I thought that was brilliant. Got huge coverage, totally drove the conversation forward. I'm objective. I'm honest. I tell it like it is. I do have a major problem with Candace right now, but that was awesome. And unquestionably so. I'll tell you my issue with the Brigitte Macron thing. It's a couple of things. One, I think it's weird. I think it's weird that Candace is so hung up on the French president, because in America, we just don't really talk about Europe. We don't really care about Europe that much. It's just not something we're engaged in. So for her to have this laser-like focus on that, to me, it kind of gives me a weird feeling from the beginning. Then you delve into kind of the history there. And for a long time, there's been an effort to go after Macron from this crew. Like, I don't know if you know, but back in 2017, there was this huge effort to say that Macron was gay, and that was being pushed by Russian media. It was being pushed by Sputnik and Russia Today. They were quoting Julian Assange. They leaked all Macron's email 2 days before the election in 17. So there's been, for like 8 years, this concerted campaign to attack Macron personally, call him gay, say he's married to his dad. So that's another thing, is like it comes back over and over again. Then you get into the person pushing this, the guy, Xavier Poussard. He wrote the book, Becoming Brigitte. This guy's crazy. Like, the guy that originated the theory, it's very fringe in France. He believes in the QAnon stuff. He thinks he's working for Trump. He thinks he's working for Putin. The guy's nuts. And when you get down into the actual information, at the end of the day, their proof is that there's a photograph of the person they say Brigitte is as a child, and using this Chinese facial recognition, it says there's an 80% match to Brigitte Macron today. And I don't think that's super good journalism. I think the evidence is flimsy. And I would say maybe there's something going on there. Maybe Brigitte Macron is weird or something. But to me, the evidence is very flimsy. So that's my problem with it. And the reason that I even call it out, why not let it alone? The reason I call it out is because, one, if it's an angle from Russia or some other thing, then that needs to be called out by itself. But two, I think it's so kooky, it just makes us look bad. I think it's one of those things where maybe people watch the USS Liberty show, but then if you're talking about aliens and secret transgenders and the Frankists and, space isn't real, it's like then we just look like we're crazy. So that's the other thing. But it's actually in reverse of what you said. If I liked Candace, I would not talk about my problems with it at all if we had a working relationship. But, since we're at odds, I'm more willing to criticize her. So it's totally the opposite.
Well, perhaps this is just a personal preference thing, but I think it's extremely important if we find out that the leader of a European nation, especially the nation which just overthrew the election here, by the way, one of the most important economies on the planet, and Europe is by and large America's ally and will have to be against China for the coming decades. If there is an elite pedophile ring which is in charge of his country, especially if you want to tie this to Epstein and everything else, and the fact that Keir Starmer's gay and all these things, the fact that we have all these homosexuals in power, I think would largely affect the culture. And we just talked about how the culture is so important. I would argue that it doesn't make us look kooky for investigating that. Very much like you said, we need to, if there's smoke, there's fire. And, you know, if there's the timing is weird or there's a string here or there's a link there. I think that she did a fantastic job on the series, and I think it's pretty important. And I'm just surprised from a personal level you don't find it hilarious that Macron's having a breakdown. I just thought that you would find it funny like I did. When I saw the legal letters, me and Tristan were laughing our ass off. It's funny. The same as Keir Starmer talking about me all day. I think it's funny these people get triggered. Maybe it's just me liking the underdog. Maybe it's just me liking that we have some degree of power to actually influence the emotions of these people who are suppressing us, especially in Europe, so heavily. So I was just surprised by your take on that. And my conclusion in my mind was, he's pretending that's not good work when it's clearly hilarious because he doesn't like Candace. And you've given your answer, which I respect. I was just highlighting why I thought that was weird, because I actually thought that was a fantastic series. And I think if it turns out she is right, I think that's very important. I would argue that's extremely important. And I mean, right now we have the problem with Keir Starmer in the UK. He got caught fucking Ukrainian rent boys. That we're not allowed to say that. I'm about to catch another charge for saying that right now. I'm trapped in Europe. And perhaps maybe you're saying America first, and as Americans, we don't care. I'm in Europe. They're the ones throwing me in jail. They're the ones fucking with my life. They're the ones who are constantly watching everything I say. They're the ones watching this stream right now, trying to raise charges on me. And the Western world, by and large, is the same thing. I think that you even said earlier at the beginning of this that America was founded on European white heritage. So we don't want to lose the ancient countries. We don't want to lose the original lands of the people we're trying to restore to glory. So I think she's doing fantastic work. And that's my personal view on it. I think she's doing fantastic work with it. And I was just surprised you disagreed on that point. That's all.
Yeah, well, and that's legitimate. I guess for me, you know, your point about it's funny, like that does resonate with me, because I thought that way for a long time. I would look at something like that and say, oh, you know, we're doing it for the lulz. We're doing it, you know, because we're trolling Macron. We're trolling everybody. But what I have come to learn over the years is that a lot of the things that seem random or seem like they're based on hype, they're all coordinated. And that doesn't mean that everything...
That is true. That is absolutely true. And there are systems and there are groups and there are piles of money being thrown around. You're absolutely right about that. I want to make it clear. You're completely correct.
Yeah. So that's where and I'm not saying, and I said it on Bradley Martin, as far as Candace is concerned, I said everything I say about the Brigitte Macron thing is speculative. You know, is it a Russian operation? I said that is a theory. That's like a working postulate that I haven't really even researched, but just that's sort of where my gut says. And we just do need to be mindful. As I grow older, I see these kinds of memes, trends, and it's easy when you're 18 and you have no orientation of politics. You kind of like, you know, when you're a kid, you don't know how this stuff works. And for me, I was a young edgelord. I was a young shit poster troll. And you'd see the bigger accounts in the group chats pushing a meme, a certain narrative, something, and you say, oh, I like this poster. I like Gavin McInnes. I like this guy, that guy, whatever. What they're pushing is funny. And I'm just using him as an example of a big poster. Yeah. And you go, yeah, we're going to join in on this. And as I get older, I realize a lot of that stuff is backed by money. It's coordinated. It is like, it's a domain of warfare. It's information warfare. And that's why I'm just I scrutinize it a lot more and I'm very careful. I fully believe that Candace believes what she's saying. I actually don't doubt her sincerity. I just think that whole narrative, maybe someone gave it to her. It might be a possibility. And even to the extent that it exists in Russia, it's either kookery or it is being picked up by an intelligence agency for some reason, because that's very strange and conspicuous, the whole thing. So especially this, like, you know, this idea that the West is like satanic pedophile elite. I don't doubt that there's something like that going on when you look at like Spirit Cooking and the Podestas and Pizzagate. I also think that sometimes foreign intelligence leans into narratives like that to sow discontent or dissonance inside of our society. And it's our job to discern those things. It doesn't mean that every narrative like that is fake. It doesn't mean, and not every narrative like that is true. It's up to us to discern. And so as far as the Brigitte thing is concerned, I think Candace is sincere. I don't find it very compelling. And I think at the minimum, it is being picked up by Russia on some level because Russia is adversaries with France. And as you know, the more you get into politics, the more you realize everything proceeds from intelligence and defense. Everything proceeds from the national security state.
Yep.
The energy needs, the technology, the media, information domain. These are all domains of warfare. We're in the age of complexity. And so if I could impress nothing else on my followers, it's that. It's all warfare. It's all ongoing, open, everyone against everyone warfare, even in the information space.
No, you made some very important points. And I'll make a quick personal story. Even when I was accused of human trafficking and locked up and all this bullshit, the American right never really disliked me in any regard. They all defended me. Even Ben Shapiro said that Andrew is correct about the things he says, but he has some of the wrong solutions, but he's by and large correct about the problems with society. The whole American right supported me. When I first got out of jail, there was nobody on the American right who disliked me until October 8th, when I told Piers Morgan that Israel was conducting a genocide. And then the entire American right turned on me instantly, saying that I'm a degenerate because I have sex with more than one girl and that I'm a terrible person, I'm a pimp, and all these things. These were accounts that were defending me the day before. And that was organized inside of Telegram groups that I've had access to, and they were paid money to all instantly slander me and turn on me. So you're completely correct. You're also completely correct in saying this is being picked up by Russian intelligence. Yeah, it was. I was fighting in China when the George Floyd riots were going on. And before my fight, I was watching the Chinese news, and the Chinese news was saying that once again, America is in turmoil as all of its unhappy citizens riot against their oppressors. The black people hate the white people, and everybody hates the government equally, and everybody's dying. Did China instigate the George Floyd riots? I don't know. Or perhaps they just saw some division and jumped on it because that's what foreign intel agencies do. I don't think Russia told Candace to do it. And I know you lightly alluded to a theory that somehow her and I were getting paid by Russia or something. I can tell you from personal experience, that's absolutely not the case. So yeah, they jumped on it, but I don't think that takes away any of the validity of what she's doing. You're right in saying that absolutely everything is run by the intel agencies. That is correct. We're in a permanent and endless state of never-ending war. And America and Europe as a whole, their only chance of competing against China is to ally, especially China and Russia now that they're so close. So I do believe that there has to be some degree in the European continent, some degree of interest. And I just think that perhaps, once again, I'm talking about feels and my instant thoughts when I saw your takedown of the Brigitte series. I just thought, is that really genuine from Nick, or is that an attack? And once again, this is a personal decision. This is me speaking from my personality. I wasn't the one who was attacked by them like you were, but I have been attacked by a lot of people who I still currently talk to, work with, or promote because I think it's better for the larger fight. So I agree with everything you're saying. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I think we're better as a team if we can all manage to work together. I also think there's a degree of, Hollywood and arguments and fighting. All these things are very interesting to the Anon who never has to put his face anywhere. You're never based enough for the Anon account who has nothing to risk and nothing to lose. And these people are trying to instigate the endless wars, and they like that we all argue because for them it's entertaining. And it's also great for them to come and write on my posts or Ian Carroll's posts or anyone's posts and say, you mentioned the Jews 99 times, but you didn't mention them 100 times, so you're a Jew. It's like, okay, well, you have nothing to lose, and you also, nobody listens to you, and nothing you say actually matters. And if you're going to be up here like you are, you understand very well the importance of nuance. You understand very well the importance of picking your battles. You understand very well the importance of being funny. The only reason you're not in jail is because you're funny. And the only reason I'm not in jail is because I'm funny. And a lot of these people who want to say the same things we say can't be funny. And humor is a shield. And a lot of people don't understand that. They're not smart enough to discern that we get away with doing what we do because we're funny with it. And there's a whole lot of things happening. And my point by and large for the Groypers is I believe in the movement. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic if we all work together. I just highlighted that I didn't think it was genuine when you attacked the Brigitte thing, but you defended yourself and I accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been a minute. No, so I was fixing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. The lag is gone. Apologize for that. And I know you guys wanted to talk this stuff out, so I just wanted to make sure, let y'all get, the Groiper stuff, Candace, Tucker. I know that's like pressing stuff. But do you guys want to hit anything else before I go into the questions or whatever? Or
No, I think we we sort of resolved the main stuff so far. So yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah. So basically I got a couple questions here, and I think it'll be interesting because, we can sit here and talk about certain topics and stuff like that, but I think these questions will give people a better insight as to, your guys' mindset on some things. So what I'll do is I got these questions. I'll answer it first to give you guys time to, come up with your own things because some of them are pretty thought-provoking. So I'll kind of keep it simple. So the first one I was going to ask was, looking back, what book, person, or event red-pilled you, right? And how did that change the trajectory of your content or public persona? So for me, the thing that red-pilled me, and I kind of broke it down into categories. What red-pilled me on women was reading The Mystery Method and a book called Conquer Your Campus when I was like graduating from high school, getting ready to go to college. Like that's what red-pilled me on women, figuring out this, this whole thing about how important social status is to them and how they're looking for a small percentage of men. That's like when I found out about like the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, right? What red-pilled me on the Jews was 9/11 and JFK, right? No matter how you slice and dice it, there was absolutely Israeli fingerprints all over 9/11, all over the JFK assassination, especially when you look at the nuclear weapon component, which is almost never mentioned in mainstream American media. Hell, even the movie JFK by Oliver Stone did everything in their power to omit the nuclear weapons angle. And then you find out that the movie was funded by a guy named Arnold Milchan, who was literally Israeli intelligence from the unacknowledged nuclear program. So like they had an incentive to keep that information from Americans. And this stuff has been like suppressed for a while. So that definitely red-pilled me when it came to that. And then when it comes to money, real estate, usury, and basically central banking is what red-pilled me on money. So I'll turn it to you guys. I mean, if you want to break it down in categories, you can. But those are the things that I would say red-pilled me on those three topics.
Andrew, you want to go in and
yeah, I
go
can ask
first?
the question again.
First, isn't that how it works?
Yeah, so the question is basically,
I'm at the back of the bus.
looking back, what book, person, or event red-pilled you, right? And changed the way that you would make content or change the trajectory of how you would make content for the rest of your life? What was the red pill on women, just so to speak, or the red pill on finance or whatever it may be? But either one of you guys could take it.
I'll run it then. I'll go. Should I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, a lot of my views come from personal experience. I wouldn't say they were a book as such. I wouldn't say it was a movie I watched that red-pilled me. I would say that, Nick is definitely the figurehead of the movement against Jewish influence. And I think that I am and was the figurehead of the movement against feminism. And a lot of people have now come along and said that women are the foot soldiers of the Jewish influence. And perhaps that's true. But every single problem I saw with society led back to one place. And that doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean women are inherently evil. It means that societies have always been productive and functioned a certain way with a patriarchy. And it allowed us to fend off foreign invaders and reproduce and have children and be in love. And it allowed men to feel like they had a stake in society worth fighting for. Men used to paint a beautiful girl on the side of a Spitfire and go die. Like, we did all of this for women, not because we hated women. We didn't oppress women. We did it for them, in service to them. And it turns out they've been massively ungrateful for that. And nearly any problem you can name, I can tie back to one thing. And it comes down to girls chasing Instagram likes instead of children and not listening to men. So I kind of came to this conclusion myself. And by and large, I had this mentality for a very long time. And I didn't really blow up on the internet until COVID, when I decided to really fight back against the systems in the matrix, because COVID was complete insanity. And I was living in Sweden at the time in absolute freedom, by the way, with no mask, no vaccine, completely normal society, while the rest of the world were locked in their houses. And I thought, this is crazy. So that's when I started to blow up online and get big. And I never began the crusade intending on becoming the most Googled man in the world. A lot of people don't actually know that in 2022, 2020, 2022, before I was arrested, I was saying to Tristan, this is the story of Icarus. We're way too big. They're going to come and they're going to get us. Turns out the UK Foreign Office wrote to the Romanians, and I have that on paper. I have proof of them doing that, saying, shut this guy up. He's a national security issue, because they knew that my momentum had to be stopped. And if I were to continue to red pill and continue to mobilize the young men of the world, that they would lose their grip on society. And that's why to this day, the UK government has an active warrant for my arrest, because they know if I go to England, the Bruv party will win the next election. They know that. So the second I land, I get thrown into jail for basically ever. And that's what they're doing to try and keep their grip on power. So a lot of it was just my own conclusions. And then I saw how upset everybody got by me saying these things. And I realized that if people are getting so mad by it, there has to be an element of truth to it. If I sit here and say the sky is green, everyone will ignore me. They don't care when you lie. They care when you say things that are close to the truth. And I kind of ran with it. And I wouldn't say there was any particular thing I read. A lot of it was just personal experience and tying it back to all the same problem, because I believe patriarchal societies, if our society became patriarchal tomorrow, we could instantly fix 95% of the issues we currently face. And if you look at the societies which are actually succeeding now, if you look at the Middle East and the societies that are successful from a birth rate perspective, from a safety perspective, from an economic perspective, they're all patriarchal societies. And my major point I was making is that the West has now become a matriarchy. America is a matriarchal society currently as it stands right now today. Even under Trump, it's matriarchal. If a man wants to have power, if he wants to be in Senate or be a politician, he has to parade his wife around for some reason. Putin doesn't have to parade his wife around. I've never seen the king of Saudi parade his wife around. What do their wife even know about politics? Why are they there? I don't know. But we live in this insane matriarchy where women have so much power over men, and they're using it to suppress and destroy the most masculine of men, which are the ones who are going to be tasked with defending the society. So I always had this gripe with that and that alone. And it turns out that big women are as powerful as big pharma and big education and big Jew, because they fucking came for me. They did not like what I said. And they came for me hard. And of course, they accuse you of crimes against women because it makes perfect sense for them to attack you with it. And here I am, 11 court cases deep. I've been federally investigated by the American government, the British government, the Polish government, the Hungarian government, the Romanian government. No one has enough evidence to put me in jail, showing that I'm actually completely more innocent than the man you walk past in the mall. If anyone else went through this level of shit, they'd be in fucking jail. So also tying back to our earlier conversation, there is part of me that thinks I've been through all this shit and then I get called a Jew and a Fed. Like, because I was the one who was red pilling the generation. I was the one who took all this risk to help everybody. And now you go on Twitter and call me these things. It does, even though you don't care, it does make you think, well, what's the point in trying then? And this is why the elites win, by the way, especially in my position. I have $700 million liquid. I can just fucking fuck off on a yacht and say, fuck those peasants and just go be one of them. And I don't do that. I sit here and I try and tell the truth and I try and be honest about things. And you get so little gratitude for it that I do believe when I'm talking about how our movements are subverted by the extremity on the inside of the movement, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And as Nick continues on his run, as he becomes more and more powerful, as he does more and more fantastic things and becomes a larger and larger political force, when X amount of his own movement turn on him and start calling him a Jew for something he once said, even he's going to sit there and go, this is fucking, what the fuck am I even trying for? Why did I get debanked for these fuckers? And that's what happened. So all in all, mine was just personal experience with women, bro. I mean, I didn't have to watch Fresh and Fit. I knew what was going on for a very long time.
Yeah. And I just added to what you were saying, because you were saying like, obviously patriarchy just went in general. And I would argue COVID was also like a big red pill, because since women tend to defer to the masses, the fact that we locked down, the fact that we had all these scares, that I think is very indicative of how much we value the communitarian nature of women.
Well, the reason they're so scared of me and the reason they're trying to get rid of me is because when you have women in charge of a society, you can use emotional arguments. It's not complicated. Yeah. You put women in charge and then you use an emotional argument to manipulate the women, and the women yell at their husbands and Matt Walsh says, okay. And then they sit at home all day. And that's what happens. So COVID was one big emotional argument, but grandma was the fucking argument for locking us all in our house for years. That's a female mentality. A man would sit and say, well, grandma's going to die anyway. Grandma's 94 and I need to go to work. So men can be more ruthless and more logical. So yeah, COVID was one big psyop run from the matriarchal frame, all of it. And every single man who was scared of his wife got the vaccine because of grandma. And every single man who was in charge of his women said, none of us are getting the vaccine. This is bullshit. Shut up and turn it off and live their life as normal. So yeah, absolutely. And the primary objective of the Matrix, and I'm fighting a different fight than Nick and a different fight from you, but I truly believe the reason they are so hard on trying to make sure in every movie, in the culture, in the law, and all of these mechanisms that women are above men is because they can simply scare the women or use an emotional argument on the women. And if they're in charge of society, then they have absolute control over the society and they don't need to convince us of anything. Men must be convinced. You have to convince me. You don't have to convince a woman, you have to scare her. And that's much easier to do when you put up some Chinese dude falling over. I never saw anyone fall over on the street, but in China, supposedly they're falling over left and fucking right. And chicks had a mental breakdown. So I went to war against that because I saw it was all just a matriarchal mindset. And maybe at a level deeper, yeah, perhaps there's, not perhaps, certainly there are groups and people who are doing this on purpose and weaponizing women against men. They've certainly weaponized women against me. I mean, I'm the fucking, from personal experience, they call 1,000 women who know me and they find one idiot and I get dragged to jail. I mean, they certainly weaponize women against me. So perhaps women are not the tip of the spear. Perhaps they're the foot soldier. Perhaps they're the pawn and not the king and the queen. That's another argument. Oh, really? But that's where all of my mindset came from. And that's why I was on the crusade I was on. And a lot of people misinterpreted, and a lot of stupid people in my own movement misunderstood me and thought that means that you can beat the shit out of women, or shoot them, or run around, you know, and all these crazy things, which once again gets applied to me, and I go to jail. And that's not what I was saying. I was saying that the world's a happier place with men in charge. That's what I was trying to do.
What about you, Nick? I'll repeat it because I know we basically.
No, I remember.
Okay,
it's
What red pilled you?
Yeah, I got red pilled back in 2016, and it was a process like it is for everybody. I was a basic bitch conservative when I was in high school because I read all the libertarian stuff and I read all the conservative and neoconservative stuff, and I was a Ben Shapiro fan, enough said. Yeah, that's just what there was. You know, back in those days, if you were a mainstream person, you had PragerU, Breitbart, you had, the usual suspects. And what red pilled me, Trump was a big part of it. Sam Hyde was a big part of it. But I had a buddy of mine. He was like autistic. He was a straight up Asperger's genius. And he was on 4chan all the time. And he was a good friend of mine. We were in Model UN and other stuff together. And I'll never forget, I must have been a junior or a senior in high school. And he called me into this room when we were setting up for our Model UN conference. And somebody goes, "Oh, Nick, there's a sophomore that's saying the Holocaust never happened." And I was like, "Really?" So I go in, I hear him out. I said, "Yeah, that's sort of interesting." And then we went and we campaigned for Paul Nealon that summer, a couple of years later. And I was hitting him with all the Israel arguments. This is in 2016. I'm saying, but they fought 4 wars of extermination against Israel. Like Israel is this island of civilization in a sea of barbarians, all the usual shit. And he fought back and made the case for the Palestinians and for the Arabs and all this. And I said, wow, that's really interesting. And what really did it for me is I got to the point in college. There were a number of other things that happened to me over time. But I got to the point in college where I said, is it all a Jewish conspiracy? And I thought to myself, there's got to be an argument that it isn't. Like there must, are they really suppressing this truth? There's got to be like a book out there that debunks all this stuff. And then what really did it for me is that on 9/11 in 2016, during the election, if you remember, Hillary Clinton was like not well. She was sick. And on 9/11, she did a thing with Donald Trump, actually. They were both in New York for the anniversary of 9/11 on the same day, and she fainted. And they literally picked her up like a rag doll and threw her into a van. I don't know if you remember that video, but she was literally like rag doll, and they fucking tossed her in a van. And then 5 hours later, they had all these explanations. They said, oh, it was too hot. Oh, she actually had pneumonia. And she comes out of Chelsea Clinton's apartment and hugs like a little girl. And it's like, wait a second. So first you said it was too hot. Then you said she has pneumonia. But if she has pneumonia, why is she hugging this kid? And everyone in the media lied about it. And in that moment, I knew if they could lie about this, they could lie about anything because they're willing and they're able to lie. And if people are not willing to investigate it or dig deeper because of censorship, because of, it's a regulated press, I said, then they could lie about all this stuff. And that for me, that's when I realized this like benefit of the doubt could not be afforded to any narrative, because that's really what it is. No one has investigated, the vast majority of people at that point had not investigated the 9/11 truth movement or the Holocaust or Israel or any of these things. All they had was the benefit of the doubt. That stuff is conspiracy territory. We believe the government. We believe the mainstream narrative. And I said, if they could lie about something that I saw with my own eyes, then we can't afford the official narrative, the benefit of the doubt on any of these things. And so that was the big break for me. It wasn't a book. It was just kind of this gradual noticing and kind of taking this tenuous frame, for how to perceive things and just seeing it confirmed over and over. And then when I saw that, I said, it's totally plausible that they're covering it up. And that was it for me.
Shit. So that perfectly dovetails into my next question. So my next question is, what was your first comment, tweet, video, or anything else that forever put you in the controversial category? And I'll go first on this one, then turn it to you guys. The thing that got me automatically put in the box of, misogynist or whatever, which is kind of like how all this started, was back in 2020. I made a comment saying, if a woman flakes on a date, you need to punish that bad behavior, and she's got to go ahead and pay for the first round of drinks when you guys meet up on the reschedule, right? And like The View and a bunch of, left-wing shows looked at it like, what, are we dogs? This guy's over here saying you gotta punish bad behavior, but what I was really doing was I was telling guys, like, you can't accept poor behavior from women and reward it. So you gotta, if she makes a mistake, you gotta make her pay for that. And they obviously likened it to training a dog, which, hey, maybe that's what I meant. But the point is that after I made that comment, because it went viral on TikTok, it got millions of views. And this is right after I had left the government, right? I wasn't even on the internet like that. And this is back when TikTok still had an organic, sharing ability with the algorithm. So I would say that was the first thing that kind of got me in there. And then obviously a bunch of other things I said about women and, top H and all this other shit. But I would say that's the one thing that started it. So what about you guys? I know you guys probably have a couple of things that put you on the map, but what would you guys say is the most controversial thing you said that put you in this box forever?
Nick?
Most controversial thing that got me in there? There was a lot of things over the years, one thing after the next. I would say it was the cookie joke is really what did it, because, and it's so stupid. It's always the dumbest shit, isn't it? It's never like your actual good jokes, your favorite jokes. It's always the stupid shit that they use. And, at that point, so, I got canceled in 2017 for just a lot of nonsense. And I was young and I wasn't very big. I was a very minor streamer. And then in 2019, I started to get a little traction because I was going really hard against Charlie Kirk and against Ben Shapiro. And it was going really well. And everybody was on my side. And what they used to kind of shoot me out of the sky was this joke where some super chatter sent in. They said, well, if the Cookie Monster has 6 million cookies, how long does it take to, whatever. And, they used that to frame me as a Holocaust denier. So up until that point, they could have said I was alt-right. Well, that doesn't mean anything. They could have said I was a white supremacist. Okay, they call everyone that. But then they took that joke and said, oh, he's a Holocaust denier. And they literally, at that point, that joke was a year old. I didn't even come up with it. Someone else sent it. Not that I don't own the sentiment, but it was such a stupid fucking thing. And then I get the Washington Post calling me and saying, do you deny the Holocaust? Do you believe it was 6 million? And I'm like, really? So that was kind of what really took me out for a minute. And, you know, but they call me fucking everything. So there's a million reasons I'm canceled. But that was maybe the big one.
Yeah, I still use that reference to this day with the whole Cookie Monster thing. I think it's like a funny way to kind of bring it up. But what about you, Andrew? What would you say is the comment or tweet or statement that put you in the controversial box forever?
Yeah, I was around for a while and I was telling the truth for a while. And then on a podcast in Croatia, we were discussing the age of women. And I said that men prefer women who are younger. You prefer a woman who's 21 as opposed to 30. And the people asked why. And I said, because she's been fucked less. And I made the point that the more men who have fucked her, the less likely she is to truly fall in love with you. So I made this point that it's not pedophilia to like younger women. You're just trying to find a...
To all the men out there, if a woman tells you it doesn't matter how many bodies she has, that's a lie. If the woman's fucked the entire town, it's not your wife. That's a town slut.
Woman with less life experience, because by and large, they've been fucked less than older women. Anyway, I made that point. The podcast came out. The next day, 400 different Instagram accounts had the same post and the same caption saying I was dangerous and misogynistic and homophobic and racist all at once. I didn't even say anything homophobic or racist. They just threw that in there. And this is where I always knew the Matrix was real, but it was kind of flabbergasting. The next day I woke up and 400 accounts had the exact same post about me. Also, the ADL said I was anti-Semitic on this day. I was like, I didn't even mention the Jews ever at this point. I never even mentioned them. And now I'm on that list. So that was really weird. And then 24 hours after that, I got the mass ban. Every single app on my phone logged out. My Gmail, my Skype, my Airbnb. I got banned on Instagram, banned on Discord. WhatsApp was banned. Every single application, they banned me overnight. And they started putting me on the BBC saying that I'm dangerous and I was banned for being a terrorist.
Was this worse than depression isn't real? Because I remember when you said depression
wasn't real, got traction, and a lot of people, you know, were unhappy by it. But that was the one comment that really sent the world into overdrive. And I sat there and I thought, why are they so threatened by that? And the extension is very simple. If you tell men to have standards for themselves, you're now an enemy of the system because they don't want men to have any degree of standard. And that's where the right-wing Christians and the Catholics hate me. Because they're basically saying, don't have standards. They're saying, meet a woman and marry her and do the right thing. Well, she's probably a fucking whore, bro. I'm not doing that. Yeah. And they say, I'm a bad person. Well, I make a whole bunch of white babies. I'm white enough. When I find a white woman, my kids look white as snow. So I'm out here having white babies. And throughout all of the bullshit I've been through, have any of my women betrayed me? We saw what happened with Crowder's wife and all these people. Have anyone come out and betrayed me? Some whores have come out and accused me of bullshit. Have any of the women with my kids or the women I'm close with betrayed me, let me down, or have they all stuck by me the entire way through? Like, I have good women around me with good loyalty inside of them, so I must be doing something right. But as soon as I told men to have any degree of standard for themselves and not instantly accept women and all their bad decisions, the entire system had a meltdown. And I think that's what really red-pilled me and made me realize that, yeah, big women's a thing.
What year was that? Andrew, what year
2021?
Was that? 2021.
I think it's a couple layers below, perhaps, the true power structures at the top. But women are certainly the pawns. They're the foot soldiers, convincing. And this is the thing that's so sad about it. And this is the thing when I make these tweets, which are deliberately prerogative, and people attack me for them. They're deliberately using women to attack white men. Only white men listen to women. Black men don't listen to women. We don't listen to what they say. We don't care. White men are the only ones who says, well, the wife said one kid's enough. Well, if you're going to listen to her and she's a tool being used to get rid of your race, well, then you're going to go extinct. So I realized I really hit a nerve with that because of the massive backlash. And then my legal problems began. And then the UK Foreign Office wrote to the Romanians, and we all know the rest of the story. So that's when I really knew I was close to something. And big women is a serious fight. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much trouble you can get in for just saying as a man that you're allowed to have standards and you're allowed to expect loyalty and integrity from females. And you, for the same reason you don't want disloyal men around you, you don't want disloyal women around you. And their pasts do matter, because if someone was a thief their whole life, they're going to continue to steal. And if they were a whore their whole life, they'll continue to be a whore. And all of these things are very valid, but for some reason you cannot say them. And at the time, the internet was a lot more controlled. Nick, with all due respect, you barely saw him. They had his ass locked out. And I was around a little bit, but Kamala was in charge and all these things, and they did their very best to get rid of me. So that's when I really realized that they are very threatened by the basic idea of masculine integrity, sovereignty, and honor and strength. They're threatened by men who are not afraid of them. That's all it is. They're threatened by men who do not bend to peer pressure.
I got a question for you, Nick, because when it comes to women, me and Tate have a very similar ideology. Get sexual experience, increase your net worth, become the highest status you can be, and then kind of have your pick of the litter and get to a position where female sexual leverage can no longer control you, right? Someone like yourself, right? You're religious, you're devout Catholic. Obviously, you're young. You have a huge young audience that follows you. Obviously, on one end, you have the Catholic mindset where, monogamy, one wife, etc. But on the other hand, we know the realities of modern women now in 2025 versus 1955. And a lot of people that are your kind of counterparts, like a Matt Walsh, etc., advocate for the monogamy style, despite the fact that we're dealing with modern women. So as a guy that's like religious, right? That's religious, but still based to what modern women are. What's your take on this situation? How should men navigate the current sexual marketplace, in your opinion?
Well, I did a whole show about this on the Walsh versus Tate debate, and obviously I'm Catholic, so I do believe in one wife, one wife, monogamous, no adultery, no cheating, and you have kids. But I do think that the trad cats, the traditionalists, they're just not being honest about the deal. They want to LARP like it's the 50s, but it's not the 50s. And that matters. They're telling everybody, get married young, have more kids than you can afford. And that was the law, 100 years ago. Maybe that was the rule. That's what everybody was doing. But the whole situation was different. There was a social and cultural taboo against women even being like bossy, mouthy, sarcastic. They didn't want to be a shrew. They didn't want to be a bitch. They couldn't just divorce you with no reason by themselves and then take your stuff and your kids. They didn't have group chats. They didn't have TikTok. They didn't have Instagram. It was a different world. And so, a lot of people it really is a reckless message. And they like to say out of this LARP, pandering to the crowd, they say, oh, yeah, get married young, have more kids than you can afford. You know what the elite would hate? Have more kids, all this kind of stuff. And my message to the young men is you really got to get solid before you consider marriage. And when you get married, it's got to be an extremely judicious decision. If you're going to have a wife, and I believe you should have one wife, you got to pick the right one. And when you pick the right one, you got to lay the ground rules early. A lot of these young Catholic men, they're so taken by the women because they have no experience with them that they become simps, and the women run their shit. And I see it. I know many people that are like this. I know many young men who are married and the wife runs their shit. She wears the pants. And these good little Catholic boys, it's almost like they buy into it more than the woman does. Because a good little Catholic guy says, oh, she's an angel. God gave me an angel and all this kind of stuff. And the woman is thinking, this pussy, I'm going to run this guy's life. I'm the one who's in charge of the house. And I hate seeing it. And for this, they call me gay. For this, they say I'm anti-family. For this, they say I'm a fake Catholic. They say, why don't you encourage your followers to get married? I think they should do it, but I think they should do it responsibly. And they got to put the women in their place. Here's the thing. I find women incredibly annoying. I'm a super high IQ person. I find most people annoying in general. I think women are dumber than men. I find them extraordinarily annoying. And I don't know how most men don't. And if I'm ever going to get married, the arrangement is not going to be that I'm getting nagged, that I'm getting told what to do, that I'm checking in with my wife. It's like, you're going to do your fucking obligations. You're going to leave me alone. And you're going to be my wife. You're not going to be my buddy. You're not going to be my best friend. You're going to be my damn ass wife. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that means you don't really like women that much. It's like, Yeah, I kind of don't. I mean, not as friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I think
Let's
of
go, based. That's based as fuck. I mean, yeah. I mean, when you get it, you get it.
about,
Great,
I-
yeah.
you know what I mean?
They're
Like,
annoying, dude. I talk to them every day. It's literally, I don't know anyone that enjoys the company of women. That fucking sucks, but continue. Keep going. I'm just
yeah, I mean,
hilarious.
look, you
100%.
know, you want to fuck them and everything, but like, when I think about it, I want to go out and have the best time of my life. I think I want to go with my best male friend. I want to go with my best male friend who's intellectual and intelligent and risk-taking and that. I don't think like, oh, we're going to go on a trip. You know what would make this really awesome? If my wife were here, if my fucking wife were alive, you know, and here's the litmus test. If there is no possibility of sex at all, are you still going to have a great time with a woman? Absolutely not.
Yeah,
It's only fun if there's a possibility of sex, because the game is fun. The game of, am I gonna get laid? Am I, you know, when men talk about that, that's the part that's fun. The part that's fun is not her witty banter. It's not her stupid fucking inane commentary. It's the fact that you're playing a game. It's like gambling. And anyway, so
No guy's ever listened to a girl's story about her fucking day at work or her dumbass friends unless they were trying to get their dick sucked or getting some, you know, get laid. It's one of the greatest points. The game is why the guys are there. If the game didn't exist, then guys would literally not give up. Women probably wouldn't even have rights if the game didn't fucking exist.
try to explain that. Doesn't come across all the time, but that's kind of my, you know, maybe my fence sitting position. I'm spiritually with Tate, but by law, I'm with Matt Walsh, I guess.
Yes, and that's kind of why I wanted to ask you that so much because, and Andrew, me and you have had private conversations on this stuff for years, how much women annoy us and stuff like that. And I find it interesting that, and I'm going to turn it to you, Andrew, that they call us gay. They call us weird because we don't enjoy the company of women. We'd rather be around like-minded guys that are higher IQ so that we can make each other sharper. But then normies will sit there and be like, you don't want to be around women? You're gay. Like, it's retarded. But go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I think white people especially have a very precarious scenario because they're on the risk of basically simping themselves into extinction. Like, whenever I see these OnlyFans girls say, I made $1 million in a day, I know there's not a single nigger who sent her $1. Like, that's all white people. That's white people.
Yeah.
That's
I gotta clip that. That was gold. It's not wrong either. I mean, there's probably a couple, but like less than 1%.
white boys. A lot of them are the same ones talking about getting married. And I can even talk about my webcam company I had, which I've been very honest and open about. All those were white men. They were all married. They all were, I love my wife, and then going to the toilet with a laptop, jerking off when their wife went to sleep. These people aren't even loyal. That's the worst thing about it. They pretend to be loyal, but perhaps they can't do any better, or they're scared of getting a divorce raped. They're not even actually genuinely loyal. So white people are in a really precarious scenario because they're the only ones who listen to women at all. And they're on the verge of basically simping themselves into extinction. The OnlyFans girl who just extorted Shannon Sharp and sued him for sexual assault and took all his money, took $10 million and quit her OnlyFans. All her stories now on Instagram are the Bible and Catholic Church because she just got a fucking payout. And now she's walking around there. And I guess what? It's going to be some little white boy Catholic who meets her, holds her hand and says, I can't believe that big black man did those evil things to you. You definitely didn't want him to fuck you like that, you poor thing. Let me marry you, love you, darling, and maybe get one kid out of it before he gets divorce raped and end up fucking sending money to some other OnlyFans girls. This is a big white problem. This simping shit is a white issue. It's a big one.
Especially
And
married guys.
it's difficult. It is difficult. And I understand what Nick's saying about, you know, he's a Catholic and he has certain rules and certain things he wants to live by. I get it.
Tate's got more bases.
The life system I came up with was basically me just looking at the chessboard and going, okay, there's the game they want me to play. What's the best move on the board? How do I get children? How do I not end up being nagged? How do I not get divorce raped? How do I keep my sovereignty? And I made that decision to do those things so I can have 25 children because I believe that's the most important thing to do. But doing that has alienated a huge swath of people who then say I'm a bad person because I'm not married and I don't have one wife and I'm not Catholic and that I am a terrible Jew for some reason, not understanding that their mindset is the reason they are being replaced in their countries and they are simping themselves to extinction. They write to me that I'm a bad person with one hand and click Pornhub.com with the other fucking hand and jerk off to girls who are actually human trafficked. So the whole thing is so hypocritical and stupid. But by and large, yeah, there was a pretty simple societal contract which has now been broken. I'll take care of you, I'll protect and provide for you, and you'll do as I say. And that's now been broken, and women don't want to listen. And men are still expected, from the tradcons at least, to do all the work with none of the rewards. And I think, as Nick quite correctly pointed out, it's very dangerous to tell young men to go and sign up for that deal, especially when the full force of the law will come down anytime she wants and destroy the guy. So before, we're right. We have a lot of things to do.
And people don't understand. When he says destroy the guy, he literally means destroy. Most people who haven't actually seen divorce up close, they don't realize. They think like, oh, it's just like the guy loses like 50 to 80 or maybe even 100% of his assets. It's not even just that. The man will have to go into debt a lot of times. Like, I've seen people who were millionaires go to $1 million in debt because of divorce. So it's not like they just lost half their shit. It's like they lost the rest of their life. They'll be working until they're fucking 80. They won't retire because of a wrong choice they made in a woman. So it's the choice you make in your spouse can make or break your entire life, essentially. It's one of the biggest decisions. When people tell you to rush into it and have more babies than you can afford at a young age, that is a trap. Like, they are right in the idea of, like, you do want to have kids. We do need to repopulate, especially the white race, because we're not repopulating. But at the same time, don't fall into the dumbass trap that a lot of people fell into and will continue to fall into because simps and pussies exist in this world.
When it comes to noticing, a lot of things to do when it comes to getting hold of the reins of power. That's all true. But we also have a lot of things to do when it comes down to the simple fact that we need people to have families that they're proud of, that they can reproduce within without being completely fucking decimated emotionally, financially, and most importantly, spiritually. No man is going to go to war for his country if he doesn't feel like the king of his own house. If he comes home and his wife doesn't listen to him and he's getting fucking henpecked, he ain't going to go and defend that street or defend that town. You're breaking the man's spirit. You're breaking his soul over a fucking toilet seat. And you're wondering why they get away with what they get away with. That's why big women's such a threat. That's why they push it so heavily. That's why they have the full force of the law behind them, who, by the way, are men with guns. Men. So it's a really precarious scenario, and I have a lot of young people who come to me and ask the same question, and I don't even have an answer because I'm in a very unique situation. I'm one of the most famous men on the planet with hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course I can get women to have my kids. Of course I can see them all. I fly my kids around on private jets all day and get them in and out the house a day. No one else can do that. If you're a normal man, what do you do? How do you set yourself up to win? It's extremely difficult, but it is a conundrum that must be solved.
Shit. So my next question, and this is a little bit more in depth, but obviously we talked about with you, Andrew, your comments on women in roughly 2021 that kind of put you on the radar. You, Nick, the Cookie Monster comment, getting ostracized by conservative media. At what moment did you say, okay, now I'm 10 toes down on this, right? Like, what made you say, okay, this experience right here, I'm 10 toes down. I could kind of go through me and then turn it over to you guys. For me, as you know, Nick, me and you had been talking about this for well over 2 years now, right? And I credit a lot of my knowledge on this topic of, us being, subverted to discussions I had with you, discussions I had with Ryan Dawson and many others. And at the end of 2023, when I got demonetized, banned off a bunch of different platforms, et cetera, for talking about this, because we were talking about this before October 7th. I want to make it very clear, just to add more credence to what you've been going through, Nick. If you talked about Israel, Zionism, any of this stuff prior to 10/7, you were pretty much guaranteed to be cooked off any mainstream social media platform, right? So we talked about it before then, and then what ended up happening is I got all this shit happening, right? So the thing that made me say, you know what, fuck it, was when I started seeing limbs of kids getting blown off. When I started seeing that we were paying for literally what's going on right now is a genocide. I think it's irrefutable now that what's going on is a genocide. Every single scholar that's a genocide scholar, hell, even Holocaust researchers are coming out and saying this is a genocide.
I said it on October 8th and got 11 months back in jail for it.
Yep. And that was still when things were hazy through the fog of war. But now I would say almost 2 years later, right, it's pretty apparent what's going on. So for me, after I saw what happened and how Israel responded and used our tax dollars to literally wage not just a war in Gaza, but to conduct a war throughout the entire Middle East, right? Like they've been doing with, a lot of these, like the clean break memo, whatever. That's when I said, you know what? I'm going to keep talking about this shit and they're not going to stop me. These motherfuckers robbed me of my money. They robbed me of my platform. I'm not going to let them get away with this shit. So that's kind of where I said, I don't give a fuck anymore. We're going to keep going. What was that moment for you guys?
Well, for me, I got canceled very young. I got canceled when I was 18, and there was really just no other option for me, because I basically got canceled within 4 months of starting my career, 3 months. I started my show on February 17. I was canceled by like March or April or May of the same year. And for me, it was the only way out was through. I knew that if I just took my lumps, I was just never going to work in politics. I had already been blacklisted. So the idea that I would get a job at Campus Reform or Daily Wire, PragerU, I was out. And I was out because of my views. I knew at that time, not even just my views about the Jews, but about race, about any of it, it was just not kosher. I could not get access or opportunities anywhere. It was so gay back then. People don't even realize, people forget that. And that's why I think I don't get enough credit, because back in 17, it was like you had to be on board with like limitless immigration and like gay marriage and feminism to be in the right wing, to have a job. Like I remember there were people at like Daily Caller that thought they were based because they would sneak in like the most entry-level red pill or something in an article or whatever. So I basically made the decision I was going to have to kind of build my own thing. I was going to have to do my own thing and change the culture, either make my scene on the outside so big, or by existing on the outside, change the inside. And that is what happened, either with some of my influence or probably just due to the course of events on some level. But it was very early on. I just made the decision that, look, I'm in politics. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to figure it out one day at a time. So I was on the outside almost from the very beginning, and there was never going to be any other way for me. I guess the big thing was I tried to get a job in the conservative movement at the Leadership Institute, and I went there for a 2-week job training. And the first day they said, everybody in the class, go up and down and answer the question why you're a conservative. And I gave this like speech. I was like, France is no longer France. America's no longer America. I'm like, if we don't close the damn borders to these immigrants, our civilization's gone. It's about the people. And which like nowadays it's like, okay, that's like 101. But the lady who oversaw the class, she was an immigrant herself. She tanked my application the first day. And so I said, wow, I can't even get an entry-level job at like this bumfuck like nonprofit or whatever, creating Leadership Institute chapters on college campuses. I was like, if I can't get a job here, this is really cooked. I got fired from RSBN like a week later. So that's kind of what did it for me. It's like, clearly I'm not going to be able to climb this ladder at all. So I had to go and just do it myself.
And let me, because I really want to have the audience understand this, right? So as you guys know, I cover dating, self-improvement, all this other stuff, right? I've been recently getting pretty involved in political commentary, right? Mm-hmm. And, me coming in as an outsider, right? And then coming in and seeing how the conservative media apparatus works. It's controlled by Jews, bro. It's fucking crazy. And I don't think people understand how much of a career destruction it is to be a political commentator in conservative media and not be supportive of Israel. It is literally a death sentence. So I just wanted to add a little bit more credence to what you're saying here, because until you go into that field and you see what's going on, you'll never understand how bad they will blackball you if you don't have the right opinion about Israel. And this is me coming in as an outsider observing this. So, bro, kudos to you, man. And I don't think you get enough credit for talking about this shit for so long and literally losing everything for it, dude. Because conservative media is absolutely fucking run by them. But Andrew, what about you? What would you say was the turning point where you said, I'm 10 toes in now, fuck these assholes?
No, you're absolutely right, because it's an indefensible position by this point to still be defending Israel. And a lot of the mainstream conservative influencers are still trying to do it. In fact, it's tanked conservatism as a whole. I would argue that this whole Israel-Palestine debate has destroyed the whole idea of conservatism as a whole, because I have nothing against Charlie Kirk, for example. I don't know him. I've never spoken to him in my life. I've seen him on the campuses destroying people about the basic things, about, transgenders or whatever. I have nothing against him. But the second he defends Israel, it's indefensible. It's indefensible. There's no way to defend blowing children to fucking pieces. You can't do that. And the fact that they still try to do it, even though it's a completely indefensible position, shows how afraid they are of the blackballing and of the backlash. My mentality was, I guess, perhaps I came to this conclusion, which isn't completely correct, but I like to believe that our enemies, although they're evil, they're not particularly special individuals. They're not particularly unique. They're not actually great people. They're evil people, but they're not great people. And this was my conclusion from going from a Luton Council estate, a single mother household, mixed race guy, all the way up to like the Bugatti Owners Club and hundreds of millions of dollars. And my entire way up the chain, I was like, so where's the good people at? Where's the amazing individuals? And you get up to the top and realize that everyone's a fucking dipshit. Even the people who are running the country's a dipshit. Even all these people with all this power is a dipshit. Keir Starmer's a dipshit. They're all fucking dumb. And I came to this conclusion that somehow all of the people who have agency amongst themselves, who are unafraid of the cancellation and peer pressure, who are charismatic, who are mentally strong, these people always seem to be on the right side. And all the people who are on the wrong side, although they may have power on paper, are very extraordinary individuals. They're really not impressive people. And I guess from there, I just kind of started to push my audience. My message is very base level. It's very mental strength, physical strength. Don't be afraid. Get rich so they can't cancel you at your job. Stick up for yourself. Escape the matrix. Be sovereign. And then I added all this in with trying to encourage men to be charismatic, to say what they need to say in a way that people are going to agree with them. Like me and you have done it on Fresh and Fit. We'll sit down, talk to a bunch of whores, and by the end of it, have them saying, yeah, I'm a whore. I shouldn't have done that. Like that's the job, right? So by trying to just encourage masculine strength and charisma in the by and large, I was trying to bring people over to our side of the fight, because I think our enemies are actually the most unimpressive people on the planet. So once I felt like that was the way out, I just doubled down on it. It wasn't only just about me. I know Andrew Tate fans train mentally and physically. I know Andrew Tate fans are hard to intimidate. I know Andrew Tate fans will say what they believe in. I know Andrew Tate fans are trying to get rich. I know Andrew Tate fans. I know what they're doing. And by and large, anyone who does those things falls on the right side of history. So that was my decision.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, here's a good one that I want to. So, what do you guys think is the most misunderstood position that you hold? Right, that people always mischaracterize. If you do an interview, it's almost guaranteed to fucking come up, right? And knowing what you know now, how would you reframe it? I can go ahead and go first here on this one. So one of the positions that people always get fucking pissed off at me about is I say, need to have sex with 50 women before you start thinking about even getting married, right? Make 6 figures a year, have at least half a year of savings in a bank account somewhere, be in good shape, obviously be 35 years old or older, and then have 50 women. Now, no one really argues with me about the 4 things I mentioned before, but when I talk about having sex with 50 girls, people really harping on that 50 number and say that's degenerate, blah, blah, blah. But the reason why I say that is because I want guys to be in a position where sex is no longer novel to them, right? So that they can be in a position of dominance where their girl can't leverage sex against them for compliance, right? This happy wife, happy life bullshit, right? Just because I understand how feminism and modern women in general have changed the dating dynamic or the marriage dynamic to even to the point where we got people that are religious like Nick that can even acknowledge it. So a lot of people mischaracterize that position. It's like, oh, it's got to be a hard 50. Look, dude, it could be 5. It could be 1. But my point is I just need you to get to a point where sex is no longer novel to you and your wife can't hold it against you. So that's my position that people always fucking misconstrue and try to attack me on. But when I actually explain it full through, then they're like, oh, that makes sense. But you know how people are. They watch clips. They don't watch full content ever. So what would you guys say is one of your positions that's always fucking mischaracterized and you got to clarify? And then if you could do it again, how would you reframe it now knowing what you know?
I mean, it depends on where it's coming from. With regard to the normie crowd, it's like everything, and it's always been everything. Yeah. They mischaracterize my position on race, Israel, women, you name it. Or if it's from the right, I would say the biggest one is that I'm an extremist. I mean, I don't think I'm an extremist at all. I think I'm moderate. It's kind of like my new thing. Because I talk to these people and they're anticipating me to be like a raging caricature of a skinhead or something like that. And when it really comes down to it, with regard to all these different issues, I think that what is called far right, what is called anti-Semitic, what is called white supremacist, it's really just reality. You know, I had a clip that went viral over the past couple weeks where I'm talking about black people in Chicago. And we emerged from a time recently where there was so much political correctness around the subject of race and race relations between blacks and whites. And so I think the conversation is sufficient now. People see my take, and what I'm saying is like, look, the city is a shithole, and it's a shithole because you got carjackings happening all the time. It's because you have this like impropriety everywhere. You know, we talk about black people in America, people talk about fatigue, fatigue from dealing with black people. It's like we all know in our lived experience in our day to day, what we can expect from black people is people being inconsiderate, people being rude, aggressive, menacing, not following the rules. And that's kind of always been my position. Is like, on some level, people look at a person like myself or others and they think we want to ship all the black people out of America. We want to kill them all or something like that. And it's like, they've been here forever. They've been here for 400 years. They've been here longer than my family's been here. We just want them to behave. We just want to hold everybody to a standard where people are polite, respectful, clean, decent, peaceful, and the rest of it. And it's like, now that I'm back on these mainstream platforms, I do a monologue about it. And even the black people are all saying, yeah, I agree with him. I get where he's coming from. So, that's just like one example. I think that we really just need to return to common sense, and not like the gay common sense like Donald Trump, where he says common sense is like no transgenderism. I'm talking about like old school racism being common sense, where it's like, yeah, we all know not all black people are bad. We also know what's going on with them, and yeah, we don't have some weird desire to like dominate women or, bully them. But we're also like, yeah, they kind of need to be put in their place. They do need a strong hand. They do need someone to treat them in an assertive way. And even as far as the Jews are concerned, for centuries, for millennia, we know what's going on with the Jews. Now, we don't want to kill them all. We don't want to hurt them. People say you're a Nazi. You want another Holocaust? Absolutely not. At the same time, we know they fucking love Israel and they're very tribalist. Is it a good idea to have them running Congress when they're walking in with an IDF uniform? Obviously not. So we just need that kind of like old school common sense. I would say that's maybe the rebrand. I would say I'm moderate. That's the misunderstanding.
Yeah, taking trips to Israel when they should be figuring out the Epstein files, shit like that. And I'll tell you this, Nick, like, it's funny to me because, people that aren't familiar with you or whatever, one of the first things they say is, you're friends with a white supremacist. And I'm like, this guy hates black people. Why are you even around? And I'm like, that's not true. Like, he doesn't. I know him in person. I've known him for a few years now. Very cordial, very nice. And then people forget that you literally helped Ye with Ye 24. So if you were so racist, why would you be helping a black man become president of the United States? So I always laugh when they say this stuff, when they say that dumb shit. But what about you, Andrew? What would you say is one of your positions that's always mischaracterized whenever you do interviews? I know a lot of people, there's a bunch with you, I know they mischaracterize.
Yeah, but none of the mischaracterizations are genuine. None of them are genuine mischaracterizations. It's define people hoax all over again. Yeah. It's the wrap-up smear. They do it on purpose, and they know exactly what they're doing. They take something you've said and they take a small part of it and they take it out of context and they repeat it over and over and over again. As I said, the whole Christian, even the Jewish right wing, no one had a problem with me really till I talked about October 8th, and they had a huge issue with me all of a sudden. And it was all instant and overnight, and it changed instantly and completely. So none of it's genuine. And, Nick's pointing out very basic pattern recognition. That's why humans are alive. We learned the pattern recognition that if you go near the tiger, you get eaten by the tiger. Yep. If you eat that plant, it's poisonous. It's fucking pattern recognition at this point. It's not racism. It's not anti-Semitism. The things we're pointing out are simply very well-known pattern recognition, and people are too afraid to say them. But I don't think any of my viewpoints are genuinely misunderstood. I don't believe I could have said them in any other way to make people understand them. I believe no matter how I said it, they would have taken it twisted it, and weaponized it. And one of the things that's most important you have to understand about the world is when they weaponize things against you, they always weaponize virtue. They're not going to weaponize the fact that, they're not going to sit there and pretend that you're a bad person unless they get to be a great person. So they're going to come along and pretend they give a shit about women so much so they can attack me. And they're going to come along and pretend they give a fuck about the Holocaust so they can attack Nick and you guys and me. It's all just weaponized virtue garbage. It's the oldest trick in the book, but a lot of people still fall for it. So if you're going to tell the truth in this world, if you're going to sit there and say, yeah, this is the actual reality of what's happening, you're always going to get pinned with some bullshit, no matter how you say it. And the most important thing you can do is not give a fuck and double down. Every time I got in trouble, the BBC used to print articles about my emergency meetings when I said racist words. So then I started saying them 15 times a show, so many times that they can't print it anymore. You can't do the same article every fucking day, nigger. So I just kept doing it. You have to double down on it. And a lot of people are afraid to do that because of the backlash. But no matter what you try and do and say, they're just going to attack you with it all day long.
Speaking of mischaracterized positions, and I kind of want to throw this to Nick real quick, because I think I've been seeing so many people talk about this, and I don't think they give you a fair shot. So we got a lot of people watching right now. By the way, guys, if you're watching on Fresh Fit, I'm going to switch over to Myron Gaines X on both Rumble and YouTube. So come on over. I'm going to end the Fresh Fit stream here in a second. But I'm going to ask this question first. So, Nick, a lot of people say that you are a undercover Dem. You used to support Trump. Now you don't support him. You have an issue with J.D. Vance. You're criticizing him because you're a hater, right? People come at you and say that you're doing, you're trying to mess with the Republican Party, blah, 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 right? Now, I know the reasons why, right? And I make sense. But I don't think, people have given you a fair shot when you give your criticisms of Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance. And I want to give you credit as well because you called it April of last year that J.D. was going to be the vice president. And then, boom, fast forward to July in the RNC, and he gets, put in there. Because I remember I was there, right? And the first thing he's talking about is attacking Iran, punching him in the nose. So I think it's pretty much undisputed now in the right wing, the conservative media, that your predictions have been damn near flawless. So if you could kind of just go over, because I think a lot of people mischaracterize your position on Trump and on J.D. Vance. I'll kind of just throw it to you there, and you can just take it wherever you want. And guys, come on over to Myron Gaines X on everywhere. On Rumble, YouTube, whatever. I'm going to end the Fresh Fit stuff. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the whole Democrat thing is concerned, it's very amusing to me. It's very amusing. I almost don't even mind it because, people are fucking retarded about politics. Like on some level, you'd like to think that we're starting to get it. The people are waking up. They see what Israel's doing. And then at the same time, you have to keep the Pareto principle in mind, the 80-20 principle, which is that 80% of the population is scum. They're just worthless scum. Now, they're not worthless, but they're low IQ followers, whatever you want to call it. It's a 20-80 principle or an 80-20 principle. And here's what I mean by this. As far as I'm concerned, we are so through the rabbit hole. I got red pilled when I turned 18 and I was in college 10 years ago, whatever it was. And we're at the point now where you have these basic normies. They're just discovering Israel. At the same time, I go and criticize Trump for something or another thing. And people say, yeah, but I mean, the Democrat would have been worse, don't you think? But the Democrats would have been far worse. This is better than Kamala, wouldn't you say? And to me, this is just such a basic mechanism of control, which is how the regime will play the right off of the left. I almost feel like it's passé. It's trite to even suggest that the right and left are the same. And yet it needs to be said over and over and over again. The Republicans are just as bad as the Democrats. They always have been. Who brought us to Iraq? The Republicans. Who made the economy the way it is? Republicans. Where did NAFTA come from? Yeah, Bill Clinton signed it, but it came from the Republicans. It's so, people like to say, but the Dems, but the left, but this, that, and the other. The Republicans are the same. They are virtually the same. The platform is effectively indistinguishable. They have the same donors. They go to the same parties. They're the same people. And so like Dinesh D'Souza and I debated back in June, and Dinesh said this to me. He said, "You're starting to sound like a Democrat." I'm like, Democrats, Republicans, are we really still doing this thing? As far as I'm concerned, it's like there are the people that are disempowered, and then there are the people that are in power. Now, whether you or I are voting Republican or Democrat, whether we watch Fox News or MSNBC, we're still goyim. We're still stupid wage slaves. We're still a bunch of stupid, disenchanted, or I should say disenfranchised wage slaves that are eating Zog slop, watching slop on TV. And here we are arguing, it should be Biden, it should be Trump. There's continuity. Trump armed the Ukrainians first. Biden continued it. Trump gave us the vaccine. Biden mandated it. Trump started the Chinese tariffs. Biden did the CHIPS Act and continued the tariffs. Trump created the corporate tax rate. Biden kept it in place. Trump extended it when he got back in. It's all the same shit. It's always been all the same shit. So, and like I said, I feel like George Carlin saying that. I feel like an edgy midwit when I say, oh, it's all one big club and you ain't in it. Yeah, I feel like a big fucking stupid midwit when I say that. And yet it still needs to be said because you have these dummies that are like, we have to vote Republican every time forever or else the Democrats, they're gonna what? They're gonna make a vaccine. They're gonna let in illegal aliens. Trump did the same thing. So, the promise of Trump is that he was gonna break us out of that. He didn't. And now we need to recognize he's just another Republican candidate and act accordingly. That was always my message.
Yeah.
Shit. What about JD Vance? Because a lot of people come at you and say, "Oh, you're just attacking him for no reason. Why? What's your gripe with him?" I know you've mentioned before that he's another Trumper and everything else like that. But what's your position on him? Because you're one of the few people that have been extremely skeptical of him since the beginning.
This is to me or Andrew?
Oh, no, to you, Nick.
Oh, to me.
Yeah.
They're talking to Andrew. And, for me, with regard to Trump, in my opinion, it was a failure after the inauguration in 2017. Actually, after the election in 2016. Because I was a ride or die Trump guy in 16. I was a ride or die guy for Trump in 2020. But looking back retrospectively, it all came down after the election in 16. And I really made this point last year during the third election that he was in. The promise of the Trump campaign originally it wasn't that we would be marginally better than the Democrats. Because that's what people are saying now. They say, well, it's better than the alternative. Okay. But in 16, the promise was not, we're going to be better than the Democrats at the minimum. The promise in 16 is that Trump would be a Caesar-like figure that would take over the government, eliminate all corruption, and literally seize power and make the country great by force. That was the promise. People forget that. Because a lot of people weren't around back then. Maybe they're too young. Maybe they weren't on board. Maybe they weren't Trump supporters. But in 16, he said in his inaugural or in his announcement speech, actually in June of 2015, he said, we need a leader. We need someone who is literally going to take the country and make it great. And I loved that language. Take the country. I alone can fix it. I will take this country and make it great. That was the kind of rhetoric. He said in April in 2016, he said, we will no longer surrender this country or its people to the siren song of globalism. In October 2016, he said Hillary Clinton is controlled by international bankers, donors, special interests. They're colluding to take over the country. The rhetoric, people forget how hardcore it was from the very beginning. And the promise of 16, to put it succinctly, was anti-corruption. It was that the people, and what's more, he said the people are not being put first because the politicians are controlled by the money. He said, we don't have real victories. We never win. Our people are not being prioritized. And why is this? The politicians won't take action. Why? They're paralyzed by money. they're not really in control. The money is in control. He said, so the only way to fix it is if an extremely rich person from the oligarchy, without taking donor money, without the special interest, if one person could get in and kind of get in the middle and get rid of all this corruption and ignore the media, ignore the press, ignore the money, and only then could they actually take action and deliver real reform, real revolutionary change. That's the kind of shit that, like, dude, like, yes, that is what we needed.
So I have a question for you both, because I think we're going to wrap up here and we're going to have to do the rest of this another time. But I have a question for you both. Let's assume everything you've said is true. Let's assume it's a big club and we ain't in it. Let's assume that the politicians are working against the people and everyone thinks they're stupid, but they're not actually stupid. They're just working for the people they really work for, which is not you. It's the money, it's the banks, it's the globalists, it's the international interests. We understand that the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. If we understand that nobody is coming to save us, if we understand that it is extremely optimistic to put all of this monumental failure down to some degree of ineptitude, when truthfully it is a managed decline and it is very purposeful, and they're doing all of this on purpose. Let's assume that all of that is true, which is the conclusions I came to also. And the only answer I found for this was trying to implement a degree of individual exceptionalism amongst my fans, saying, look, it's all fucked. You need to get as rich as you can, as strong as you can, as charismatic as you can. You need to be uncancelable. You need to have people listen to you. You need to go out there and show that you're not afraid of them. Individual exceptionalism was the only answer I came to combating all of these things. Is there another answer? Was I wrong? What else can we be doing? What else can we be encouraging people to do? Because everything Nick has said is completely correct, and I've known it for a very long time also. If you think a political party is going to fucking turn this shit around, you're out of your mind. So what is the answer? What do we tell people at home to do? What is the solution to this problem?
Have to engage in politics. Have to engage in politics. You know, a lot of people are very down on it. People say, well, you know, we're not going to vote our way out of this. No, but if enough young people who are brilliant get involved in some way, either they become rich or they become influential, you know, in 20 years, we will have a different class of people that are running the show. And, you know, maybe if nothing else, I mean, this is how I sort of imagine it in my mind. We need to create a cadre, a revolutionary class. And by that, I mean, we need lawyers, professionals, entrepreneurs, money people, political people that when called upon, when summoned, can go to Washington, D.C. and run our society for a revolutionary new regime. Because we effectively had that opportunity with Trump. I just think about it from my experience. Trump won the election in 2016, and he had no gang. He didn't have any niggas with him. It was just him. So it's like, who do you run the Treasury? Who do you run the State Department? Well, you got to fall back on who's there. And that's Wall Street. That's the bureaucracy. That's the usual suspects. That's because there was no cadre. You know, they had this idea that they would, you know, they had a website called greatagain.org. They were going to solicit resumes from all the hillbillies and hill people of America. You know, and there are obvious reasons why they trashed that or whatever. But a big reason is they didn't have the personnel. There was no political will. They didn't have organization. So I'm a big believer in people need to create this revolutionary class. That's kind of been my project. And before we get going, though, everybody in the live chat's asking about Vance. Can we talk about that before we all wrap this up?
Yeah, absolutely, bro. You know, I'm hanging out. I'm going to continue streaming after this, so I'm not in a rush. I know, Andrew, it's late for you, Andrew, so I know you might have to go. Nick, I'm going to be here anyway, so if you want to stay on, you're more than welcome. We could chop it up more about politics. But yeah, we could definitely talk about Vance if you want. Yeah.
Start talking about Vance.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, because we kind of touched on it earlier, and Andrew, you kind of...
That's why I asked you that question. I was looking at chat. I was like, that's why I asked you to with Vance. Yeah. Well, go ahead, take it away.
And Andrew, you said that... you know, you and Tristan like Vance because Vance is an advocate for you guys in Europe and Romania. So that's why I wasn't going to lean in. But I do just wonder, what is your position on Vance? Do you support him, or what's going on there?
Well, it's the infinitely divisible problem. I mean, I'm not going to lie and pretend I know as much about him as you do. You know a lot more about him than I do. You seem to know his sources of funding and all these things. And I don't like to preach ignorance, but it's true. You know a lot more about him than I do. It's a matter of, he is the only one who is sticking up for Europeans' rights to speak freely. He is the only one who mentioned what happened in this country where I have Romanian children. He's the only person in the entire American administration. He was all over wall-to-wall news in Romania, and the Romanians were very afraid of what he was saying. He's the only one sticking up for people in the UK. and their complete lack of the ability to speak. Now, I'm not saying that everything else he's done is perfect. I'm not saying I know his history inside out, but I am saying on a base level, initially, what he is saying I completely agree with. Perhaps when that battle is won, then the infinitely divisible problem, once, perhaps if Europe gets turned around and he doesn't have to talk about that anymore, he might say something else I disagree with. But what I've seen of him on the issue I care about, I'm 100% aligned with him. So now you can easily say, but did you know his money came from that? I didn't know. What I did know is that he was the one who was wall to wall in Romania saying what you're doing here is garbage and bullshit. So I support his view he had there, and I respect the fact that he was the one sticking up for us here in Europe. And I'm not saying he's a perfect person for the same reason I respect Elon for freeing us all on Twitter, and I completely disagree with him on a lot of other things. Perhaps maybe it's just, I'm an older man. Perhaps it is what it is. Perhaps I like to be respectful of people who I think are doing the right thing on some issues. I'm not going to pin him down on every single thing he does I disagree with when he's doing something important that I do agree with, and that fight's not over yet. Until that fight is over, until those orcs are slayed, I just want to let him to do what he's going to do because no one else is doing it. That's my very simple view.
I think we got to slay the elves. I'm more worried about the elves than the orcs. We got to slay the dark elves, if you know what I'm saying, metaphorically and politically. I disagree, and I think that in 2027, the Groypers are going to overthrow Vance. Steve Bannon actually went on his show, and he said that he might run in 2028 because he doesn't think Vance has what it takes. And I'm with Bannon on this one, because Vance is the connector for Silicon Valley. That's how he got the VP slot. That's what gave him all this clout. That's how he got in the Senate. He's the connector for Elon, for Peter Thiel, for David Sachs, for that whole crew. And maybe you're not interested in all that. And look, you have a different perspective. You're in Europe. I know a lot of Europeans that are super pro Vance because he is an advocate for those guys. On some level, I understand because you are in another country. I get that. But at least in America, this guy's a big problem, literally and figuratively. He's fat, and he's like a major problem. So big, conceptually. And so for me, I said this the other day, 2027, the Groypers are going to descend on Iowa, and we will overthrow him. We will overthrow him over my dead body. Will he be the nominee? And you can have it be any way you like. Maybe it'll be someone that hasn't been announced yet, but I'm never Vance. I'm never Vance. I'll never vote for a fat person. I will never vote for, that whole Thanksgiving situation he had going on. But maybe we'll just agree to disagree.
I think I'll tell you something that you already know. You have massive political clout. You have massive political influence. Your attack vectors are something you need to think about heavily because your attack vectors are not people coming to your door. Your attack vectors are some fucking retard shooting up a school with a list of bullshit in his pocket with your name on it. And that's your attack vector. And I truthfully hope and wish the absolute best for your movement in all ways. I think what you're doing is very positive. I think you're one of the most positive voices on the internet. I've never been against you with a lot of the things you say. I have views on certain people we disagree, and that's absolutely fine. And I truthfully wish the best for the Groyper movement and the best for America. And I'm an American too, and I'm going to be there in September. And I'm not against your movement at all in any way. I just explained why my brother and I were so pro-Vance. And I'm sure, perhaps, if the roles were reversed, if you were getting dragged in and out of Romanian courtrooms, which were a stitch-up, if you were getting thrown in and out of Romanian jail, if your assets were seized, if your Romanian kids were not allowed to be seen by you, if you were getting charged every 5 minutes for free speech violations for things you tweeted and things you said on emergency meetings, and the only American politician, the only one who said anything in your defense was a guy called J.D. Vance, you wouldn't say, yeah, but fuck you, Vance. You're probably not that stupid. So you'd probably sit there and go, well, that would be pretty retarded and ungrateful to do. You know more about Vance's history than I do. I'm just explaining why my brother and I supported him because he was the one who was highlighting what was happening to us. And it's as transparent as that.
If I can come into this real quick, because I see here, and I actually, Andrew, you beat me to it. I wanted to get your perspective on, the current administration, because obviously me and Nick live in the United States. We're going to be a bit more critical of them because of, we have to deal with the consequences of their decisions versus when I've seen JD go to Europe, he's been real good about calling out the European government for cucking and not allowing free speech, for saying that you guys need to put more money in when it comes to Ukraine, standing up to Zelensky. He was the one that actually started that argument at the White House with Zelensky saying you're being very disrespectful, etc. So I can see from your position as an American living in Europe how J.D. Vance has helped you, especially the other thing, too, I want to add, and I want to toss it to you so you can answer it. because I don't want to go too much in detail. Me and you have talked privately about this. We know that the Biden administration was heavily involved in your politicized prosecution, right? So anything compared to those dickheads is going to be better. So
I don't want to interrupt, but we have to make one
Go
thing very, very, very clear. It is extremely easy for the anon who has a cartoon profile picture and nobody knows his fucking name to sit there all day and be yelling at people like us, telling us who we should go against, what we should say, and all these things. But when you're the one who's literally having their life completely wrecked, you have to look at things in a different perspective. And I'll be honest, I don't give a shit that his wife is Indian. I give a shit that he was the one saying to the Romanian government, you can't do this to American citizens who have done nothing wrong. That's what I give a shit about. And I argue anybody else who was in a cockroach-infested jail cell would probably think the same, including Nick and including you, Myron. You'd sit there in jail and go, well, finally an American politician gives a shit because this is completely unfair. Now, maybe you're different than I. Maybe you would say, fuck you, I don't want your help. Your wife's Indian. Maybe you would. I don't know. But I'm saying that what I have seen of him in my own personal experience has been very positive. Doesn't mean he's a perfect person. Doesn't mean he's the best VP. Doesn't mean I know everything about him. Doesn't mean I even disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I'm just explaining why my brother and I would then support him. It's a very obvious link there. It's not a complicated conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, the administration prior didn't say anything or help you guys out at all. So I'm completely, empathetic to your position on why you support him because, the U.S. government turned their back on you during Biden administration. At least
the U.S. government worked with the Brits to lock us up. Blinken signed it. Blinken himself said, get him. Like this was the highest possible level matrix attack to the tip top. And if Kamala won, I'd be in jail for 25 years. So if anyone says, why does Andrew not go batting against the Trump admin? Well, I just think it would be disrespectful for me to do that. It's not that I don't disagree with a lot of the things they say. Perhaps it's just the old school honor code of thinking, well, okay, yes, everything Nick said is right. They shouldn't be marginally better than the Dems. Completely correct. They shouldn't have fucking bombed Iran. That was insane. They're doing lots of things wrong. Completely agree. Completely. But I'm just saying, if you ever look at my brother and I's points of view, it's not some conspiracy. We're not paid. The American admin don't even talk to us because we're so toxic. We're not on their team in any way. We don't have direct link to any of them. It's just a matter of sitting there going, well, at least they highlighted the problem that was happening to us personally. Very much like if Vance were to visit a fucking family farm somewhere in Colorado and help them with their fucking wheat harvest, I'm sure they'd be pro-Vance, irregardless of what his other shit is. That's all it is. So I actually enjoy these conversations. I enjoy learning some of the things you guys know. I enjoy hearing your perspective. I'm not arguing against it. I'm just explaining why my brother, especially, my brother more than me. In fact, if you look at my account, you see hardly any. My brother especially supported Vance because he was the only one he saw on TV calling for Romania to be a fair democratic country. And Tristan has 7 Romanian children. That's all it is. It's not a complicated conspiracy theory. That's all it was.
Yeah, no, your perspective, I completely understand it, right? And that's why I think it was very important, for us to kind of, because people don't understand the position that you're in as an American dual citizen living in Europe. It's a completely different perspective. So I totally get it. I did want to get into the Iran war a little bit. I don't know, Andrew, how much time you have, or you, Nick, if you guys want to save it for later or keep going, but I did want to get into Iran, but I don't want to hold anybody up. If you guys got to go, that's totally cool, but I'll leave it to you guys.
Yeah, I got to get going pretty soon, but we could pick it up another time.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll save that one for next time.
But once again, I wish you guys the best, the absolute best. You probably noticed I'm enjoying my summer. So I'm glad you guys are holding it down and keeping it real and saying all the racist things that need to be said. So I really wish you the best, and I'm not your enemies in any way. And I'm always happy to come online and discuss and explain why any of our points of view or any of the things we retweet or XYZ come across a certain way. Anyone who believes I'm a Fed, I strongly think you should have your head checked. And I'd love to know where these Feds are when I'm getting thrown in jail. And anyone who thinks I'm pro-Jew, I'd love to know where their money is because I don't have any of that shit. So I know the truth. And I think most people actually know the truth. There's just some extreme people on the right who are going to call everybody a Jew no matter what. And I wish you guys the absolute best. I wish America the absolute best. I'm coming to America, and nobody's 100% right about anything. Everybody's a little bit wrong. And that's what's so fantastic about the human condition. We all need to have different points of view. And hopefully, if enough people have enough different points of view, we can get somewhere near the truth. So thanks again for the conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I'm happy to do it again absolutely anytime.
Did you guys want to tell them what we're thinking about in September? It's up to you guys if you want to.
Well, I know I'm going to be in America in September, so I'm going to be around. So I don't have anything really that planned, but you know me, Myron, you know me. So just I'll be blowing up your phone anyway, whether we work or we don't work. So
absolutely.
I'll be around. And, one more thing to really keep in consideration that's so important about this internet world and Twitter and Rumble and all these comments and all this bullshit. I've never had anyone say anything negative to me in person ever, male or female. I've never had a woman even say anything negative. In fact, they come up to me and they dote adoringly. So, all of us are massive cultural forces. We're all massively loved by the general population. And that's a fantastic thing to finally feel after suffering so much, to tell the truth. So I think we should all be very proud of ourselves, and we should enjoy it for what it is. And we should continue to do our very best to be entertaining and tell the truth at a level that people can understand and digest. And hopefully we can, us three plus whoever else, can work together long enough to make a genuine impact on the culture, because all these evil people, these scumbags, this big club we're not in, they are dying. And I don't see a future for Israel with the new current generation. I don't see a future for a lot of these things, considering that the youth, the future voters, the future policemen, the future lawyers, exactly like Nick highlighted, are going to be fans of mine, fans of Myron's, and fans of Nick Fuentes. It's going to be a very different world. So I think we do our very best to keep that in mind and keep it contained and keep it as effective as possible. And we enjoy the battle for what it is. And whatever happens, we all get to go down in history, which is a fantastic thing to know. And hopefully it all ends up well for us, because we've pissed some very powerful people off. And as it currently stands, I've suffered the most so far, but I'm not dead. And I hope that none of us end up there, and none of you have to go through what I went through. So let's just keep up the good fight and never give up. Unfazed.
Absolutely. So what I'll tell the people this, guys, tentatively look for September 19th. I know me and Nick had something set up for September 19th. We'll try to get Andrew in there. If things switch around, obviously I'll update you guys immediately. But right now, mark your calendars for September 19th. Hopefully Andrew can make it in. Or even if he comes in the day after, right? We can, do something with Nick on the 19th, then Andrew comes in and we do something else, right? They'll be in town for a bit, so we'll definitely make it crazy. Bring them on with some girls. It'll be a good time in Miami. Maybe do some vlogs, stuff like that. Nick, what about you, man? Are you going to do America First tonight?
Yes.
What time are you going to go live? I'll make sure I get off. Let's move everybody over.
What time?
Yeah.
Oh, nighttime. I'm thinking sometime after.
I guess you are black.
Night. I don't know. Probably 9:30-ish. We'll shoot for. But yeah, no, great conversation. And Andrew, likewise. I don't consider you an enemy at all. I consider you a friend. And it's good to just get on the stream and just talk. And it's different perspectives and it's different views. And that's really what it's about. It's no gatekeepers, no censorship, none of that shit. As long as people can get together. And, I think, like you said, we're all 90% on the same side. That's what counts. So great conversation, fellas. Let's pick it up again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, guys. I'll see y'all. I'm going to stay on stream, guys, if you're watching. Definitely, once Nick goes live, I'll move everybody over there and I'm going to get off. So let me know, Nick, if you do get a time. I know you're on black people time, though, even though you're white.
I will.
All right, man. Later, guys.
All right, see you guys.
All right. Coming in and out
all right, chat. I'll see you, Andrew.
On Facebook.
Peace out, brother.
I'm going to end the stream.
All right, guys. So hold on one sec. I'm going to go ahead.
You guys have enjoyed it.
W stream, ninjas. W stream. W stream. I got a black screen. Give me one sec, ninjas.
Let's see if we can get that out of here before I sign off. Let's get me back on the big box. Bring that over here. We'll click and drag. What's up, fellas? How we doing? We're back. We're back. Oh, yeah. Okay, it was a fun time. Good debate. I thought it was funny how Tate had to get off when they started talking about Vance. I mean, it is late where he's at, so it's probably not that. But still, very funny. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. I know I didn't talk too much, and I was in and out. Like I said, I've been selling stuff on Facebook almost all day for moving. But I'll be trying to stream almost every day while I'm moving. It's easier than shooting pre-recorded videos. So thank you, guys. Talk to you later.